Okay, well, I'd like to call this committee to order for this afternoon's proceedings. And just as we start, I would like to clarify that Dr. Chris Mazza was invited to come before the committee this afternoon from 4:30 until 7. And just to clarify that it is not that he has refused to come before the committee. He has a letter from his doctor citing a lack of fitness to attend the hearing. So I just wanted to clarify that point. Yes, Mr. Klees.
If I might, my understanding is that we had scheduled 3 days. We have the ability, I realize it's short notice today, we have Mr. Beltzner coming tomorrow. We have a last day of hearings scheduled, authorized by the legislature. The minister did say that she would agree to come back. I would ask that we direct the clerk to invite her to come during that slot on Thursday afternoon from 4 to 7.
We agreed that France has a flight to catch at 4:30.
I think if it's between getting the minister again or getting a flight, I'll get the minister.
Okay. Very good. Well, we'll see about that invitation, then we'll put the invitation forward. And our first person for this afternoon is Rhoda Beecher. If I could ask you to come forward, please. And just to confirm that you've received the letter for a witness coming before the committee.
I have.
Very well. And also, are you going to swear an affirmation?
Yes, please.
Ms. Beecher, do you solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give to this committee touching the subject of the present inquiry shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And who is that you have with you for legal counsel?
I'm Beth Symes. I'm counsel to Ms. Beecher.
Okay. Very well. And it's time for the government to go first. So who would like to go? Mr. Zimmer.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, sorry. Did you want to make an opening?
No, I don't. That's fine. Thank you.
We'll go to Mr. Zimmer, and we'll go in 20-minute rotations then.
20 minutes? Thank you, Chair. I don't expect I'll use the 20 minutes, but Ms. Beecher, my information is that you are a human resources professional.
Correct.
And I have your resume, and you've been doing HR work since the early 80s, I guess?
Correct.
Could you just briefly walk me through the highlights of your career, the 4 or 5 different positions that you've had?
I started at Toronto Hydro in early 70s.
Yeah, I don't need the detail, just so I get a quick overview.
In Toronto, many years ago. And worked in a bargaining unit position at Hydro for the first number of years. I was the first woman to work a shift job at Toronto Hydro. Then was promoted through to the Human Resources Department. I worked in the Human Resources Department as a generalist and then worked my way up eventually to the director of the department and then to the vice president of Human Resources at Toronto Hydro, responsible for effectively labor relations and industrial relations, did all the bargaining for the QP local on management's behalf, dealt with labor relations grievances, those kinds of things. I was heavily involved in the municipal integration of utilities, and at that time the Centre...
I just need the positions, not the
Okay, then Centre for Addiction and Mental Health. I was recruited to be the vice president of Human Resources there as well. Was there for about 10 years doing more or less the same thing. I then left the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health and opened a small consulting business and have been doing that since.
And when did you first enter into a relationship with Ornge or any of the Ornge entities?
It was Ontario Air Ambulance at the time, and it was in 2006, early 2006.
And what were your duties at the Air Ambulance?
I was a part-time consultant. I worked 3 days a week to assist in the Human Resources Department.
And when did you then associate or become associated with Ornge?
when it became Ornge. I stayed as a consultant with Ontario Ambulance as it moved to Ornge.
And that was the Ornge not-for-profit?
Correct.
And then I understand at some point you moved from the Ornge not-for-profit to the other Ornge for-profit entities?
Correct. Late in 2011, when or mid-2011, when Ornge Global was created, I was moved to Ornge Global.
And who moved you to Ornge Global?
Dr. Mazza.
When did you first meet Dr. Mazza?
About 6 weeks after I started at Ontario Air Ambulance. I did not have an opportunity to meet him for the first almost 2 months. He was away, and I met him shortly thereafter at Toronto Hospital, where he was working an emergency shift. He asked me to meet him there, and that was the first time.
Is it fair to say that Dr. Mazza was instrumental in your joining the Ornge organization and then eventually the Ornge for-profits?
Yes.
And what was Dr. Mazza's salary when you first got to know him at Ornge? That is the Ornge not-for-profit.
As I recall, somewhere in the $200,000 range, between 2 and 3.
And then when you moved over to the Ornge for-profits, were you aware that Dr. Mazza's salary was considerably higher, something in the order of $1.4 million?
Not at that point, no.
When did you become aware that Dr. Mazza's salary was in the order of $1.4 million?
In December of 2011, when the Ministry of Health required the salaries, the list was put together of all of Dr. Mazza's financial receivings. And that's the first time I saw it together as the total amount of money.
So just so I understand the sequence, when Dr. Mazza was at Ornge not-for-profit, his salary was in the order of a few $100,000.
Correct.
Dr. Mazza moved over to Ornge, or his salary to Ornge for-profit. Did you move over to Ornge for-profit at about the same time?
I believe so.
And why did you move from Ornge not-for-profit to Ornge for-profit?
I wasn't given a choice. I was moved. Dr. Mazza moved those people he wanted to move.
Did you report directly to Dr. Mazza?
No, I did not.
Who did you report to?
Maria Renzella.
And she reported directly to Dr.
Correct.
Mazza, I understand. Did you have any role in the discussions or the strategies or the decisions about whether or not Dr. Mazza, after he moved from Ornge for-profit to Ornge not-for-profit, whether he should or should not, or whether there was an obligation of any sort to report his salary?
No, I was not part of the discussions. I was told by Ms. Renzella that there was a legal opinion that said we did not have to report, and on that basis I then gave the instructions to remove from the Sunshine List all of those people who we no longer had to report.
Did you agree with that legal opinion? Given your background of 25 years as an HR person in government or quasi-government organizations?
I wasn't asked my opinion. If I would have been asked, I would have said no. It was not a good idea.
And that remains your opinion today?
Yes.
Why would that have been your opinion at the time, and why does it remain your opinion today?
Because the intent is for public disclosure, and I think that any entity that receives government funding has an obligation to that public disclosure, as long as that law is there.
Did you make your concerns or objections known at the time?
I did raise it with Ms. Renzella.
And how did you raise it with her?
In discussion.
Mr. Zimmer, do you mind pulling the mic
Oh,
up?
I'm sorry. How did you raise it with her?
In discussion.
did you raise in the nature of a concern or an objection or a caution?
No, just a concern. Yes, a concern.
You worked with Dr. Mazza for a few years.
Yes?
You must have formed an opinion of his management style.
Yes.
How would you characterize his management style, management personality style?
Dr. Mazza is a brilliant visionary. He is incredibly passionate and committed and energetic. He just moves very, very quickly. He also is extremely compassionate. If an employee at any level in the organization was ill or had a family member that was ill, he would never hesitate to pick up a phone and say, "Do you understand what's going on? Can I help to explain it?" He also had, however, the ability to explode. And he did explode on occasion to rank and file staff, to frontline staff, to management staff, to senior staff. And a lot of my job was to, and the other senior executives, was to pick up the pieces after that event, or in fact, in my case, to try to mitigate that at the front end, to be proactive. So if I knew he was going somewhere where, in fact, he might lose his temper, I would run him first through a process of, what are you going to say? How are you going to say it? Those kinds of counseling, if you will, to try to mitigate some of that.
And that's based on your 25 years as an HR professional.
Exactly.
Tom Lapine was a colleague of yours at the time?
He was.
And what was his office position?
He was the Chief Operating Officer of Ornge.
So Tom Lapine said in his evidence before this committee some weeks ago, and I'm quoting from Hansard, Lapine, quote, other people within the organization felt that they were eligible for promotion prior to her. He's referring to Kelly Long. So it created a great deal of tension and angst within the organization, that is referencing her hire. Do you agree with that statement?
I think there was a fair bit of angst in the organization, yes.
Over her hiring?
Over her promotion.
And also aspects of her relationship with Dr. Mazza?
Once that relationship was known, yes.
All right. And Mr. Lapine went on to say, quote, I think Kelly, again referring to Long, had a more direct route into his office than any of the other executives. In other words, if anyone said something contrary to what Kelly believed, chances are you wouldn't be with Ornge for very long. End of quote. Would you agree with that statement?
No, I don't. I was the person, unfortunately, who did almost all of the terminations at Ornge over the period of time. No one was ever terminated because Ms. Long didn't like them.
Did you have to intervene from time to time with Dr. Mazza in his, as you said, in your attempt to be proactive to soothe his relationship with employees at Ornge?
Yes.
And I appreciate your reference to trying to be proactive and hit off a crisis or an uncomfortable situation or whatever. In that regard, what is your view of the propriety of Dr. Mazza first arranging for a consulting firm Pathway, you know that, to take Ms. Long on as a consultant and have Mazza, in effect, pay her salary in the amount of $58,000 by paying consulting fees to that amount. And subsequently, Dr. Mazza, after some, I guess, 6 months or better part of a year, formally moving Ms. Long over to Ornge as a vice president communications. Given that they had a personal relationship?
If I could put it into a context for you, I was asked, along with Steve Farquhar of Operations, to interview a Pathways employee to come and do some healthcare stakeholder work at Ornge. I was told by Dr. Mazza that this was a family friend, and Mr. Farquhar and I went. We met with her. This was not an in-depth interview because she was working for another entity. We felt that she was bright, eager to learn, came back and said, as far as we were concerned, if she was working for Pathways, that was fine. I was not aware until this series of hearings that Pathways was not paying her salary. I didn't know that. Once in the organization, she, a period of time later, and I can't tell exactly how long, but certainly at least about 6 to 8 months, applied as an external candidate for a posted vacancy. And I believe that that was a stakeholder relations person. It was not a director or advisor, just a stakeholder person job. She went through the normal recruitment process as an external candidate, would have competed against anybody else who would have applied as an external candidate, and then she was successful on that position.
But you did know at the time that it was a family friend of Dr. Mazza.
Correct.
Because Dr. Mazza put the plug in, put the word in for
Correct.
All right. When did you find out that they had a personal relationship?
About 2 years later, Dr. Mazza told me that he had separated and that he and Ms. Long had started a personal relationship.
Right. Raymond Beltzner, who's the chair of the board, his daughter, Carrie Ann.
Yes.
She was taken on by Ornge to work with Ms. Long to do a marketing services agreement.
Actually, her first position was an administrative position, I believe, in operations.
But at Ornge.
At Ornge.
And did you know that she was the daughter of the chairman of the board?
I was asked by Dr. Mazza to interview a young woman that he knew for an entry-level administrative position if and when they became available. That was not unique. I was asked often to just have a chat with people that might be interested in coming in. I interviewed Carrie Ann Brunet. She was exceedingly bright, very articulate, and I felt a good candidate for Ornge if there were a vacancy. I told Dr. Mazza that. Subsequent to that, she did apply, again, as an external candidate for a position, and she got that position.
What did you think of the propriety thus far of, first we have Dr. Mazza's family friend, later personal relationship, person joining Ornge. When she moved over to Ornge, the salary was $120,000. And then we have Dr. Mazza. He put the word in. Then Dr. Mazza put the word in on behalf of the chair of the board to hire his daughter to do the infamous marketing services agreement along with Ms. Long. Did you start to think this is a bit too a touch of nepotism here?
I did not know that Carrie Ann was Mr. Beltzner's daughter until after she had been hired.
And how did you find that out?
Dr. Mazza told me. After she was in, several months in, he did tell me that that was Mr. Beltzner's daughter.
Were you surprised that you hadn't been told that
No.
Before?
No.
Did it strike you as odd now that we have the CEO's friend, girlfriend working there, and we have the daughter of the chair of the board working there, and they're both working on the marketing services agreement?
Neither at that time, when they came into the organization, they were not working on the marketing agreement. There was no Ornge Global at that time. They both came into Ornge, the public entity. They came in through a process that Human Resources had that defined a very tight process for selection of the best candidate. and they both went through that process.
So you know about the marketing services
We
agreement?
have 3 minutes.
Okay. Now, I understand at some point that your daughter joined
Correct.
Orange. When did your
Correct.
daughter join Orange?
My daughter applied for a vacancy for the base manager in London. I think it was in
Anyway,
2010.
She was hired.
She went through the same process. I had nothing to do with that, but she
now-
did. Yes.
I just want to, have a look at this from a third party view outside the organization. We have an organization that now hires the CEO's girlfriend to do a major project, who hires the daughter of the chairman of the board to work on that major project, for which there are millions of dollars paid for the marketing services agreement, although it's unclear whether they had the skill set to do that. And you're the director, the head of the HR, and the final piece is the daughter of the person in charge of HR ends up with a job in Orange also.
Correct.
Would you not agree that from a reasonable person from the outside, that looks a bit like some pretty heavy-duty nepotism? The senior managers, CEO, chair of the board, vice president HR for Orange, have all got their girlfriends or children working there at a publicly funded organization.
These young women went through a process of selection for those vacancies. They were successful on those vacancies. There is a rigorous process for that selection, and they were successful. It is not unique at Orange for people who work there to bring family and friends as potential applicants. It, in fact, was encouraged.
Perhaps that was one of the problems at Orange. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and we'll move to the opposition. Mr. Please.
Thank you, Chair. So did I hear you correctly that you were hired by Dr. Mazza to the Ontario Air Ambulance Service? Is that right?
I'm sorry, Mr. Cleese, I can't hear you.
Do I understand correctly that you were hired by Dr. Mazza into the Ontario Air Ambulance Service? Is that correct?
I was hired as a consultant by Dr. Mazza, yes.
By Dr. Mazza. And as a consultant, what was the nature of your contract? Was it annually renewable? Was it a competitive contract? Was it put out to public tender? Can you tell us about that?
It was not put out to public tender. It was renewable yearly. It was a personal services contract that allowed me to service other clients as well. I had, when I left CAMH, established a consulting business, and so the intent of coming to Orange on a consulting basis was to be able to continue to service those clients. So the nature of the contract allowed for that, as long as there was no conflict of interest and with Dr. Mazza's approval. And then the contract would be renewed on a yearly basis.
And how many years was it renewed?
I was there so it would have been renewed 6 years.
6 times. And at any point in time, was that contract put out for public tender?
No, it was not.
Was there a procurement policy at Orange for contracts, consulting contracts like this?
Yes, there was.
And did that procurement policy require public tender?
For certain contracts, yes, it did. I'm not exactly sure of what the requirements are.
Why was yours excluded from public tendering?
I don't know.
Did you have anything to do with that?
No.
So who made the decision that your contract would be renewed?
Dr. Mazza.
And how would he handle that?
He would give me a new contract.
Did you ever question, as the head of HR, the person I understand from others was totally responsible for employment contracts and signed off on all of those contracts? I understand your signature
Correct.
is on all of those employment contracts. As the individual entrusted with that responsibility, did it ever cross your mind that perhaps there should be an open process, and that even your contract should be put up in a transparent way for tendering?
No, it didn't.
Why?
It never occurred to me. It just didn't.
When your first contract, how much were you getting paid under that contract?
I was invoicing $22,540 a month.
And for those of us who don't have a calculator, that translates into how much a year?
I don't have a calculator either. $270,480.
And 6 years later, what was the value of your consulting agreement on an annual basis?
Annual. I invoiced again. I invoiced monthly for $26,265,000.
And were there any additional benefits that you received in addition to your consulting agreement?
I received no benefits. I did receive a contingency fee based on performance.
And how much would that amount to?
In the first contract, it was $58,800. And in the second contract, from April 2008 until January of 2012, it was $30,900.
So your total compensation in the last year, which would have been last year,
Yes.
Including all in, what would your reportable earnings have been?
I don't know the total amount. I'm sorry.
What did you file for taxes last year?
Well, I have a consulting business, so I file business taxes. I would think it's around $320,000, something to that effect.
Okay, let me rephrase this. I understand you have a business and you bill through that.
Correct.
What was your gross revenue in your consulting business last year that you reported?
I don't know. I don't have the figures.
Ms. Beecher, I have a hard time believing that.
I understand that, but I don't have the figures.
Did you pay your taxes last year?
Yes.
You have no idea what you reported by way of gross revenue?
Not in gross, no.
Okay. This is not helpful.
I'm sorry.
You know, we come up against this quite often. Whenever there are sensitive questions that we ask, there is this selective memory loss, and it must have been something in the water at Ornge, because it's quite consistent. It starts with the CEO and flows down through the board, and now we have you. Can your counsel help you with the answer? You have documents in front of you. You must have prepared.
I do, but I don't have the annual gross. I have the yearly. I have what I earned when I came to Ornge and what I was invoicing.
Okay. I'd like to ask you about how terminations were handled at Ornge. I understand that you were the one tasked with the responsibility of drafting the termination agreements, making recommendations in terms of what the termination settlements should be. Is that right?
With advice from counsel, yes.
Right. Do you have, can you give us a sense of, in the time that you were responsible for that, how many employees were terminated from Ornge? It doesn't have to be exact, but...
There were a lot. There were probably... Prior to the last round where Ornge Global, all of Ornge Global people were terminated, and that was about 40, there were probably 40 in the 6 years I was there.
40, and these would have been relatively senior people, I'm assuming.
No, that was 40 across the board. We had bargaining unit employees as well, and we had mid-level employees, but across the board.
Can you give me an idea of what the total severance payments would have been that taxpayers had to foot the bill for for those 40 employees?
No, I can't, but I do know that that was accounted for separately, so it should be available to you.
Can you give us just a guesstimate?
I couldn't, because each one was different. I had bargaining unit employees who would receive, with the agreement of the union, $50,000, and I had senior executives who went with a year's salary.
I understand that those settlements were quite rich.
Yes.
And amounted into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, for which obviously taxpayers received no benefit. And clearly those severance payments were being made out of cash flow that came from the Ministry of Health into Ornge that was intended for frontline emergency ambulance service. Is that right?
Correct.
There were no other sources of income for Ornge, were there?
Correct.
I'd like to, this morning, we had an interesting presentation from a paramedic from the London base. And I shared with him a set of minutes from a meeting that took place at the London base. And attending that meeting were Tom Lepine and yourself. Mm-hmm. And who else? From the base.
From management, the manager of the base, that was Hallie McClellan.
Right.
Tom and I came from head office, and we had someone from communications who did the minutes. And I'm not 100% sure who it was, but we always had someone from the communications department to do the minutes.
And who is Hallie McClellan?
Hallie McClellan was the manager and is my daughter.
And how long had she been with Ornge before she was appointed as, was it manager of that London base?
She wasn't.
What was her title there?
She was the manager base operations for London, and she applied as an external candidate for that position. She was not with Ornge prior to that.
What experience did she have in managing an air ambulance hospital base at that time?
I was not part of that selection committee, as I have said. At that time, however, generally for managers of the bases, we were looking for leadership ability, for ability to be advocates for our paramedics and our frontline staff. We were not necessarily looking for either paramedic experience or for experience in an EMS service. So if you look across the bases over the period of time, you will see that there are some where the paramedics, in fact, did become the managers, and in some cases they did not.
You heard from Mr. Brandon Donoff this morning that one of the consternations that paramedics and pilots alike had when they were introduced to managers who were going to now look after their bases, that first of all, they didn't recognize them. They were very concerned when they realized that these people had no experience in operating an air ambulance base. I would be interested to know, as the Director of Human Relations, how one could possibly put a search together for the manager of an air ambulance base without having a key component of the qualifications previous experience. How did that come about?
The experience that we had with paramedic managers, that's to say we had paramedics who were excellent paramedics who then applied for and became managers, was not a stellar experience, which is one of the reasons we began a leadership academy to try to teach our frontline staff and our emergent leaders around leadership. The issue for us was, how do you run a base as a leader? How are you an advocate for those paramedics? How can you help them get what they need in an expedient way? How can you support them? And not necessarily we had many people in operations who could deal with both the clinical side of the issue, and we had physicians who could deal with the medical.
Ms. Beecher, you will forgive me, will you, if I, for just a second, will be speechless at that response? Because something as important as managing an air ambulance base surely is not an entry-level position for someone who wants to practice leadership or motivation. Surely, and I'm going to ask you this question, do you think it would be possible that if there was a public posting for the position of manager of an air ambulance base, that you would have a number of applicants who may not be paramedics, who may not be pilots, because they may not want to be managers, but certainly people who have an experience in managing an air ambulance base?
I think Mr. Donoff said it this morning, that there had been 1 full year with no base manager. We had looked unbelievably hard across the province for a base manager for London.
And during that same time, people from Ornge Global were flying around the world, to Brazil, to the Far East, to all kinds of places, to Miami, looking to open up new branches that had nothing to do with the core business of operating an air ambulance service in the province of Ontario. Is that right?
Correct.
Correct. You know, I'd like to ask you another question that deals with this for-profit side, which causes many of us a great deal of consternation about the siphoning off of tax dollars. Were you ever a shareholder in any of those for-profit entities?
I believe that I was a shareholder in the global piece. I believe there was an agreement. There was never any money in that shareholder agreement, and certainly none of the people who were in there ever received any money.
So when you say you believe, you're the contract person
Yeah.
at Ornge. Why would you just believe? You either were or you weren't. You must
My
know.
contract itself in the last year was with Ornge Global.
Yes.
When Ornge Global was terminated, my contract terminated. So I actually was with Ornge Global at that time.
Yeah. And my question was, were you a shareholder of Ornge
Yes,
Global?
I was.
Yes, you were.
In Global GP, one of the companies.
And what did that company do?
Nothing.
Okay. Why was it there if it did nothing?
It had been set up along with a number of other companies. There were, I think, 17 in that structure, which was inordinately complicated and one that I didn't quite understand. But it was set up to ultimately, when the private sector side of the business began to earn money, it was set up to allow us to flow money back to the province of Ontario and for some shareholder money to stay with the shareholders. We had been told over and over that the public money was staying on the public side, that there would be no flow of money from the Ontario side, so from the public entity, the $150 million, to the private side of the business. We had been told that by Dr. Mazza, by Maria Renzella, Tom Lepine. We clearly were told that there was a very clear dividing line. It was called North Korea and South Korea. And that there was no flow of money from the public to the private. But there ultimately would be money to flow from the private to the public. That never got started. There was never any money.
Can I borrow 5 minutes from my next round, please? So this entity of which you were a shareholder, you're telling me is now dissolved?
Yes.
Have you signed any documents to that effect? Or do you have any evidence that has been...
I have received trustee information, yes.
And what did that trustee information tell you?
It said that the entity was bankrupt.
And are there any claims against that entity?
Yes.
How much in claims?
I don't know. I have no idea how much I have a
That
claim
would have been
in.
in the trustee information.
No, I have no idea how much, what the claims are
Do you
in
know
total.
who is claiming against the company?
No,
Well, you're a party to, you're a shareholder.
I'm a claimant,
You're a claimant as well.
Correct.
And how much are you claiming?
$50,000
And that is for what?
for my contract, which was terminated without its fulfilling its obligation.
And so you feel that, and who do you think is going to pay that, by the way? If you've got a claim, there's no revenue, you've got a $50,000 claim against a bankrupt company, where's that money coming from in your mind?
I expect not to get it.
I see. When you put the claim in, you must have, when you went through an exercise of futility?
Actually, yes. I knew I wasn't going to get it.
Okay. In your opinion, the termination that was given to you by Ornge, and let me put it this way: when you were terminated,
Yes.
what were you told? What was the reason for the termination?
I was told that the contract with Global, Mr. McCurley was the person who told me, said that the contract with Global that my contract was with Global, it had been assigned to Global, and that given that Global was going out of business, my contract would terminate. And he then asked me to stay on to do transition work on a separate contract with the new entity, Ornge,
And
which I did.
And how much were you paid under that?
$2,500 a day.
$2,500 a day.
Yes.
And your role for that, what were you doing?
Transition work to help transition to the new team.
Okay. And what are you doing today?
I'm doing consulting work.
And what type of consulting work?
I'm doing a lot of Bill 168 bullying investigations, harassment investigations, compensations, all those kinds
And your
of.
billings for that work are
To date,
on a daily basis. You mentioned that you were getting paid $2,500 a day, I guess.
it will depend. It runs from $2,500 to $3,500. If it's a not-for-profit, it's less.
Okay. I'd like to just finish up with one other question here. When you hired your daughter, because it would have been you who hired her.
I
right?
did not hire my daughter.
Okay. When your daughter was hired, who hired her?
It was the operations department that hired her. I believe the director of operations did the interview, and at that time it would have been Randy LaRue, who would have taken it through to Steve Farquhar and Tom Lepine.
And was that a public posting?
Yes, absolutely.
And how many applicants were there?
Well, it had been a year, and we reposted it. I have no idea. I was not involved in that opportunity at all. Once I knew that she was going to be involved, I was not involved at all. I have no idea who applied, but there are records for every posted vacancy at Ornge.
Is she still there?
No.
Did she leave on her own accord?
No, when the foundation was ceased to exist, at that time she was the executive director of the foundation. Her job ceased to exist, so she was let go as well.
Okay, and where is she working now?
She's she's back in the fundraising department
With what organization?
with the York School.
Okay. Have you ever made donations to the Liberal Party?
Yes,
Do you consider yourself, are you a member of the Liberal Party?
absolutely not.
You
I
say-
have also made donations to the Progressive Conservative Party
Which
and
one
to
do you
the
feel
and
better
to the
about?
NDP party.
Which one of those do you feel better about?
None today. Absolutely none.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Move to the NDP. Ms. Jelinas.
It'll come on. It is rather interesting that you made the switch from Ornge, the not-for-profit, to Ornge Global, knowing full well that Ornge Global was a for-profit company. You explained to us that you know that the Ministry of Health was the only source of funding for Ornge. So where did you think your contract money was coming from?
In retrospect, I never even thought about it. We had been told that the public money was staying on the public side, and that we were courting private investors, and that we were looking for seed money to begin to look at the not-for-profit side. I know there were many meetings with the CEO and private investors, so my assumption at the time was that that was the seed money that was going to seed the private sector side, and that was paying my salary and everybody else who was on the global side.
But there again, why would a private company offer HR services to a not-for-profit entity?
We were in Global, when we started to create Global, there was a fair hiring piece. We hired marketing department, we hired salespeople, we hired research people to work on, offshore stuff. So that a piece of the human resource time, not only mine, but a piece of the human resource time was charged back to Global. So there was a fair bit of activity in the first 6 to 8 months in the HR area on Global. There was a tremendous amount of research into the American laws, the sort of how you hire people there, what kind of benefits you have to pay, what are the comparators, those kinds of things. So the HR group was, in fact, doing work for Global.
All right, but you were still doing work for the non-for-profit?
Correct.
Okay, so you had a 3-day-a-week, $576,600 a year salary. I'm strong in math. To do work for 3 days a week for the non-for-profit Ornge, but you work for the for-profit, even if part of it got charged back to Global because you did work for Global, the fact remains that here you are in a private entity providing HR services to a not-for-profit entity.
Correct. Just for one clarification, at that point I was not working 3 days a week, I was working 5. But yes, I was. I was working for Ornge Global, and I was providing advice and services to Ornge, Ontario.
Okay, but being paid by Ornge Global.
I was only paid by Ornge Global in the last 6 months, 6 or 7 months. My contract until then had been with Ornge. And then it changed about 6 months before I was told to change the contract to Ornge Global, and I would get, my invoices would be paid by Ornge Global.
Okay, so for the time before this, when Ornge Global was being set up, you would bill Ornge Not-for-Profit.
Correct.
Do work for Ornge Global, and then some money would...
Yes, I believe that there was a formula that for chargebacks. I didn't know exactly what it was, but we were asked from time to time, probably on a quarterly basis, how much time are you spending on Ornge, and how much time are you spending on Ornge Global? And that was put into some kind of a formula, and I never saw.
Who asked you that?
Maria Renzella.
Maria asked you that. And she asked that of many other...
Yes.
Of everybody who worked. You said there was 40 positions with Ornge Global?
At the end, there were probably 40, yes. And so... in the end, when we terminated everybody, I think it was about 40. We had salespeople, by that time, salespeople, marketing people, research people.
So here we have a for-profit entity that really wants to leverage what Ornge has. You're setting up the full team, marketing and research and getting ready to hire people. Did you hire people outside of Canada ever?
Yes, once.
Would you mind sharing who that was and what for?
We brought a VP of sales to Canada. He was a Canadian who had gone to California to work for a company, knew Dr. Mazza, and we posted that position. He applied for it, and we did bring him back to Canada. We did not pay anything in terms of his transition, but he left. He was leaving his job in California anyway, came here, and then within maybe 3 or 4 months was terminated.
So all of those people really believe,
Yes.
believe that they were working on basically taking what Ornge had developed here in Ontario and bringing this abroad to bring money back to Ontario.
Absolutely.
But everybody knew that so far no money was coming in.
Yes.
So all of those 40 people with $500,000 a year salary were being paid from what again?
I don't know. I don't know how they were being paid. The assumption, because we had been told over and over again that there was no use of public money ever going to be allowed in the private side, the assumption was that there were private investors who were giving seed money so that we could begin to run this entity.
And those private investors would have been the shareholders, or
no, they were people who were interested in Ornge that Dr. Mazza had courted quite heavily to help fund the entity.
You did mention that people were, when Mr. Klees mentioned people were flying all over the place, he mentioned the Middle East, Brazil, etc. You said correct. Who do you know that did that went and represented Ornge abroad?
Luis Navas went to Brazil. I think the only person who represented Ornge other than Dr. Mazza on a global basis was Luis Navas. So I think that both Mr. Navas and Dr. Mazza would go to Brazil or to, they were in Florida a lot, they were in Nashville, Atlanta, those kinds of places.
And how do you know that?
Because I was there when they were making arrangements to go. So they would be talking about, we're going to talk to this company in Nashville to see if we can do a partnership, or we're going to Brazil to see if we can do the, if you will, the orange in the box, as Brandon spoke of this morning, the orange in a box in Brazil. So those were very open discussions about looking for business offshore.
In your task for human resources, I read your bio that you did do the bargaining for
Correct.
People that were under the collective agreement. A lot of people under the collective agreement were really unhappy with the turns of events that was happening. How did they report that to you, and what did you do with that information?
We had a labor management meeting. We had three agreements actually at that time. There was an OPSU agreement, there was a CIW agreement, and there was an OPEIU agreement. The OPSU covered the Ornge Communications Center individuals, the CIW covered the medics, and the OPEIU covered the pilots. We would have regular labor management meetings with both OPSU and CIW. We would have them at least on a quarterly basis, and sometimes much more often than that. The union made it very clear to me that they were exceedingly unhappy with a lot of things. The aircraft interiors, the single medic, all of the things that you have heard. In each and every case, I took that back to the operations department, had the discussion with them, and then at the next meeting, and sometime if it was important enough, such as it was with single medic, we would schedule a special meeting, and I would bring operations with me to have the discussion about that issue. So I was the spokesperson, if you will, but the intermediary. I couldn't resolve the problem, but I certainly could ride on the back of operations to get it done.
All right. Did you feel that things were being done?
No.
Was it common at Orange that serious problem would be brought to you and nobody took action to resolve?
It's difficult to say nobody did. So in the case of the interiors of the aircraft, it's difficult. It's a timely process. It takes time to fix it. It was not moving fast enough for the medics. There's no question. And so we continued to say to operations and to the physicians, you've got to put some intermediate steps in. You've got to do something on that basis. So it wasn't always. There were many times that we were able to resolve an issue very quickly. There were many times that we were able to listen and clear it up. But there was some major, the single medic was another one that went on and on and on. There was no question. They told me, individual medics, I know they've talked about not having conversations with people, but individual medics would come and see me and talk about it. I would go out to the bases and they would talk about it, and they would certainly bring it in labor management. So, and I brought it right to my colleagues. So we knew that there were problems.
The single medics that got worse and worse, what period of time would you say that those people started to come to your office and tell you?
About a year. It was, so if you go back, we went to London in August, so it would have been the spring of 2011 that it had always been an issue. There was always a single medic. But this issue became more of a problem as I understand operations had changed some of the rules around launching or sick time. And
some of your colleagues at Orange had quarterly meetings with the ministry. Were any of those problems ever shared?
I was not part of the ministry meetings. I never met a ministry person. I didn't go to any of those meetings. What I was asked for on a regular basis was information. How many medics do we have? What, have we had any terminations? Have we got, what's the status of numbers of people in particular bases? I don't know what was discussed at those meetings, but based on the information they were asking for, I do believe it was raised.
Okay, but you knew that those meetings were taking place?
Absolutely, because we would be asked for tons of information just before those meetings.
Okay. You are probably aware that the New Democrats file a Freedom of Access of Information to get salary information about Dr. Mazza. Did anybody from the ministry ever ask you about that Freedom of Access of Information request?
I did not know there was a Freedom of Information until this process, and no one ever asked me from the ministry or anywhere else about Dr. Mazza's salary.
Would you have been able to figure out, to put it together if anybody had asked you?
I would have to put it together, but until December of 2011, no one asked me directly to do that.
But if 2 years ago, when we filed the Freedom of Access of Information, had the government gone and asked you, you would have been able to put it together?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and share it with the ministry?
Yes, absolutely.
Just nobody bothered to ask?
Right.
Okay. Coming back to, so now you have medics coming to you telling you things are not good. Some of the policies internally have been changed, and we have more and more single medics. We have the issue with the interior. Did you see it coming, that doom and gloom was about to happen here?
Yes.
When did you see it coming?
I guess when medics began to feel that they were not getting adequate responses from inside and started to go outside.
And when would you say that happened?
That was last spring as well, I would think.
So,
spring, summerish of 2011.
So from 2011, the alarm bells inside were loud enough that you could hear them?
Yes.
And you knew that medics had started to go outside of the organization saying that they were not happy?
Yes.
And did you share that information with anyone?
Yes, everyone.
All right. Could you name me a few and tell me?
All of the Dr. Mazza, Mr. Lupine, Ms. Renza, we all, I certainly made, I don't think I was the only one, but I certainly made everyone aware of it. There was a great deal of discussion about what to do and what we should do and we shouldn't. The meeting that Brandon Donoff spoke of this morning was a result of that beginning. We had set up what we called a round the world tour, where we would go to all the bases and say, what are your issues? Talk to us. Let us talk to you. And so we had done, there were 3 that were done last spring. London was the one Brandon spoke of this morning. There was one done in Ottawa, and then there was a 3rd that I wasn't at in Toronto. So they had started the, if you will, the dialogue with Mr. Lupine as the COO of Orange Operations and the frontline staff.
Okay. So I'm guessing by then the pressure is mounting. I mean, we got the minutes of the meeting that was held in London. I'm guessing Ottawa and Toronto must have been very similar.
Absolutely.
The pressure is mounting. Was there a reaction from within to try to change the course and correct or address the concerns?
I can't answer to the change the course, because that would have been operations, and as best I understand, they didn't. I think there was a great deal of communication. I think there was a real sense that we weren't communicating. And so the intent was for Mr. Lupine to go out and tell people what we were doing and why we were doing it.
What Mr. I forgot his name now, from this morning told
Donoff.
us, what he told us was really that they were told things were like this because Orange was out of money. Mm-hmm. Was that all that was communicated to them? Things had to change because we're out of money?
No, at that meeting, there were really 3 intents. One was to talk. We had been hearing a lot that global. Nobody understood what global was all about, and there were all the rumors. So one of them was to go and talk about global, what we were intending to do, why we were intending to do it, and Mr. Lupine did that. We then did a conversation about finances, and that in May and June of last year, across the board, not only in the operations department, but across the board, there was a real sense of crisis around finances for Orange. We were told to turn the lights down. We were told to reuse. I mean, there was a real sense that money was going to be an issue. And so that became part of the conversation as well. That, yes, the system is not sustainable as it is, and that we have some major financial issues.
So you were going to sell Orange in a box that was being described as a system that is not sustainable. Bit of a tough sell.
Well, that's exactly what the medics were saying. How can you be selling this if, in fact, we can't get it right here?
And the answer to that was?
I don't think that there was an answer. I think we were saying we needed to do this so we could mitigate some of the financial need from the province. And if we could bring money back into the province, we would be able to then fund Orange Ontario.
I'll borrow a few minutes just to finish this. Now that you know that funds that were supposed to go to Orange Public were being used for Orange Global, do you understand a little bit better why things were so tough on the Orange Public side?
If what you're telling me is that Orange Public money did flow to the private side, then yes, absolutely.
Yes, it did, and the Auditor General is there too, if you ever doubt.
To the day that Global ceased to exist, I continued to believe what I was told, which was there was absolutely no cross-funding.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, and we'll move to, sorry, would you, the Auditor General would like to make a comment?
Okay, I would have to say we had no access whatsoever to the records on the for-profit side, so I can't really comment one way or the other as to, quite frankly, how they were funded. We just were not permitted access.
Very well. And Mr. Zimmer?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. So you were a member of the senior executive team along with the CEO, Mazza, and the chairman of the board, Beltzner. And I want to come back to this business of the CEO's girlfriend, Beltzer's daughter, and your daughter all ending up as employees. And I tie that back to your remarks earlier in the afternoon where you said you felt one of your responsibilities was to be a proactive HR person and sort of hit off issues that might cause problems later down the road and so on. And it strikes me as passing strange that someone with almost 30 years of experience in very senior HR roles with a stated ambition to be proactive did not tweak to this idea that on a company that, depending on public dollars, no matter what the organization's structural chart is, you did not tweak to the idea that, you know, there's something that is going to look odd here when the CEO, the chairman of the board, and a senior member of the executive team responsible for hiring and firing, human resources, all have their partner and or daughters getting jobs at Ornge. Did that not strike you as odd?
Just to be clear, first of all, I was not part of an executive committee with Mr. Beltzner. He was not. He was the governance side of the House. As I said, the organization encouraged family members and friends to be considered. That is what happened with those three young women. Clearly, there's a law in the province around family status. Once you learn about a family status, in the case of Dr. Mazza, there is an Ontario human rights law that says neither person is going to be terminated. And so that's the counsel that I gave him at the time when I found out, which was 2 years later, that in fact he had a relationship with Ms. Long.
With respect to your own daughter, did you not think it was passing strange that the head of HR's daughter ends up with a good job, in addition to the daughter of the chairman?
No, yes. It was not what I would have chosen. Because I didn't want my daughter to be working at the same place as I was working.
Did you discourage her
Yes.
and say, don't take the job?
I discouraged her. As you probably are aware, children don't necessarily listen to everything you say.
Who was on the selection committee?
Randy LaRue, who for operations, it may have been Steve Farquhar, and I don't know who else. I do know that Randy was involved as the director.
The selection committee would ultimately report to you.
No, the selection committee in operations reported through to Tom Lepine. And there was a disclosure at the front end.
And at the end of the day, you signed the contract to hire your daughter?
No, I did not. I would not have anything to do with that selection. Someone else in Human Resources signed it.
I got a tweet from somebody just now who's been watching and said this whole thing of the daughters of the HR president, vice president, and CEO daughter, or chairman of the board daughter and girlfriend of the CEO, they use the expression, it just doesn't pass the smell test.
There were a lot of other family members in the organization. In one base, there were I think, 20 paramedics. There were 8 married couples. So this, again, in the organization, this was not unique. There were husbands and wives and many sisters and brothers, and there were cousins.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Sorry. So The company that provided services to the Rhonda Beecher Resource Consulting Limited.
Rhoda Beecher, Human Resource Consulting Limited.
Yes. And would you be prepared, in answer to some questions that Mr. Klees raised, would you be prepared to file with this committee, and if you want, file it in camera, your personal tax return for the last couple of years and the return of your consulting company?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Clerk. The clerk will be in touch with you on that.
We have 3 minutes.
Yeah, just 1 second, Chair. Here, I'm sorry, and I missed your daughter's surname.
McClelland.
How did she find out about the job at Ornge?
It's posted in a newspaper.
Did you do anything to direct her to the posting?
No, I did not.
The last question that I have is that you said that you would have provided salary information and other information for the salary amounts if you had been asked by the ministry. And if that's the case, that you would have provided it to the ministry, what was the problem that the auditor had in that he could not access any of that information? The only information that he could get was the total, the gross salary amount, but the auditor made it quite clear he could not get anybody else's salary information. So I'm conflicted here. On the one hand, you say, well, I would have given it if asked. The auditor asked. The ministry asked, and it only came, the information on salaries only came out after there was a tough face-to-face meeting with the minister and the chair.
Correct. I was not asked. I mean, I was not part of the committee that dealt with the Auditor General's requests. I did dialogue some with the Auditor General's staff in terms of information that they wanted from me. Was not about salaries. It was about what was in the files and how things were done in HR. But I did not take part in that discussion, and I was not part of it until December, mid-December, when the ministry made it clear that we would supply it, and Ms. Renzella was putting it together. And that was the first time I saw it together.
And the auditor would like to make a comment.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Zimmer, I should mention that Ms. Beecher is correct. Normally, you might say as head of HR, that's who we would go to. It was made very clear to us that you will deal with Ms. Renzella with respect to any salary requests. So we attempted to get the information basically through Maria Renzella as opposed to Ms. Beecher.
A follow-up? Do I have a minute left? Yes. Okay, so given what the auditor said, did you walk into Renzella's office and say, look, I'm telling you as an HR person, release the information? That's my advice as an HR professional.
Yes.
I'm the vice president. My advice is release the information.
Yes.
Get on with it. Did you ever do that?
Yes.
And what?
It obviously wasn't released.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to Mr. Klees. Mr. Klees?
Just for the record, when I questioned you about severance and so
Yes.
on, I too got a little tweet here from someone who apparently has some information. I'd like to know if you would dispute this, that the number of employees terminated were 62 and the amount of severances was in excess of $6 million.
I wouldn't be able to say yes or no, but if they've got it, they've got it.
Okay.
I didn't.
It's a lot of public money.
Yes.
Going to pay people to leave. I'd like to ask you about the Augusta Westland consulting agreement. When did you first become aware of that marketing agreement?
I became aware that there was a marketing agreement probably late in 2000 and, in the fall of 2011. I did not see the agreement. I still have not seen the agreement. But I heard there was an agreement, a marketing agreement, where we were going to provide assistance to Augusta Westland on their aircraft that we had just purchased, and that was my involvement.
Were you made aware of the value of that agreement?
No.
Okay. Have you had any contact with Augusta Westland?
No.
Never?
I had a dinner with all of the senior executives and Augusta Westland shortly after the purchase agreement was signed here in Toronto. Other than that, I have never met anybody from Augusta Westland or had any meetings with them.
Can you tell us who from the government was at that dinner?
Nobody. No government person.
No government person?
No.
Okay. I'd like to just ask you about these MBA entitlements that we heard so much about.
Okay.
Can you confirm that your daughter received funds from Ornge to enroll in an MBA program?
She did not.
You were aware that former Chairman Rainer Beltzner's daughter, Carrie Ann Brunette, did receive
Yes.
$90,000 to study?
Yes.
And as the Director of Human Resources, I'm imagining that those, you would have to sign off on that, is that right?
Yes.
And what was your rationale? How did you justify signing off on that for someone who, frankly, did not have very much experience in that position? What justification did you have for that?
Ornge had established something called a leadership academy. There was concern from the board around succession. There was concern internally about our ability to promote people who had the experience we needed to be management people. And so we established a leadership academy, which was in fact a 3-week course over the year that dealt with, we had a faculty, we had people who taught about leadership style, your own style, then how you deal with people, and then how you deal with difficult decisions over the period of a year. Each department elected their emergent leaders. Those people were approved to go to this in-house class. There were exams, there were projects, there was testing, and at the end of that year, a hierarchy of people was established. So those who were the top of the class and the bottom of the class. We would then take that to the executive team for agreement and then to Dr. Mazza for discussion. In some cases, people were offered assistance in undergraduate if they were top of that class and were considered to be an emergent leader. Sometimes they were given the underwriting for the masters. We had one in education. We had one in aviation. So it was not just the MBAs.
So given the fact that at the same time there were financial stresses within this organization, so much so that the paramedic from London told us that at that meeting in London they were told a base may have to close down because of a lack of funding. Mm-hmm. How did you justify spending $90,000 to pay for an MBA for an emerging so-called leader? And by the way, she's no longer there, right?
No, none of them are there. They're
so that $90,000 really didn't do much to help the succession at Ornge, did it?
Just to be clear, each of those people who did get any kind of underwriting did sign an agreement to remain for 5 years. And if they left before that 5 year, which is not unique in the business world, if they did leave before the 5 years, they would have to refund, or the entity to which they were going would have to refund the piece of that money. When we terminated those people, we terminated them, and yes, you're right, that 90,000 went.
So when you terminated them, did you also cancel that requirement to pay back those funds?
Yes.
Why did that happen?
Because our understanding legally was we were terminating them. If they left, as I understood the agreement, if they left voluntarily, they would be required to pay it back. If they were terminated, they did not.
In retrospect, was that a good policy of Ornge to spend those funds given the fiscal circumstances of our air ambulance service?
We did go in the final year. We had 2 years where it seemed to be fine. In the final year, we did go to Dr. Maz and say, do you want to do this again? Do you want to run the class again? Do you want to consider anybody for post-secondary education? And we were told, because we were concerned that spending the money on the individuals and on the classes, we were told that the money had been allocated and that we could go ahead and run it. We did check each time.
And yet, while this was going on, the training for paramedics was going nowhere. We're told by paramedics that in all of those years, there were only 3 critical care paramedics that received training. And were you aware of this imbalance of allocation of resources, that these people in the head office, these young people who were brought with no world experience whatsoever into this organization were being actually given priority over the frontline paramedics and pilots within this organization? Were you aware of that?
From my perspective, the paramedics were in fact receiving the training. It is mandated. They must.
According to them, they weren't getting it.
They're getting the training. Was it quick enough for them? Was it efficient enough for them? And was it the kind of training they wanted? I think I would have to agree, they all said no. It wasn't fast enough. It wasn't what they wanted. But we ran both CCP and ACP courses each year that they were required. The medics were never happy with the speed that we did it, but they in fact were run at the same time. The funds, in other words, for the academy never suffered, the paramedic academy never suffered because there was funding that had been pre-allocated to the education.
Thank you. We can move to the NDP.
What you're saying is that the paramedic academy was separate from the leadership academy.
Correct. That was the ATM, the Academy of Transport Medicine, had been running for a number of years, where they trained paramedics from level to level. And that's the same entity that does their recertification training that Mr. Donoff was talking about this morning. So that continued all the way through.
Okay. But what Mr. Klees was talking about was for the Leadership Academy. Very few of them had access to that.
There was no, to be clear, the Leadership Academy did not include unionized people. In the last year, we set up a separate entity for unionized people and ran a modified leadership course only for unionized people. We had pilots, paramedics, both pilots and paramedics in that class. And it was the same sort of leadership development class, but it was separate and distinct.
Do you remember what the salary scale was for paramedics, roughly?
I think a CCP, so critical care paramedic, was at about 100. I know that a number of them are on this sunshine list with overtime, so I think it's close to $100,000.
For critical care?
Correct. And then it would be a little less for advanced care, and again, a little less for primary care. But I don't have the numbers.
All right. And would you have an idea what the salary scales were in the pilot collective agreement?
Well, it would depend. Yes, it depends. The fixed-wing pilots were running somewhere at $60,000. The rotary wing pilots, who are fairly unique and scarce, were higher, but they were switching from CHL to us at the time that I left, and I actually don't know where that ended up. But they would be close to the $100,000 as well, I would think.
Just some questions with respect to some of the positions. Louis Novice, were you aware what his official position was at Orange or at one of the entities?
Yeah. Yes. My perspective is that Mr. Navis was the Chief Operating Officer of Orange Global.
Okay. And what do you base that on?
I helped with an immigration lawyer to get him to the United States, and that was the title on the visa application.
Well, that's a really good.
Yes,
good
I thought
answer.
so.
Thank you. Just with respect to your earlier answer you provided with if you were asked directly, could you provide the salary for Dr. Mazza, and you indicated you could do that, how would you piece that together, and what information would you be able to access?
I would have to actually sit down and take so it was made up of a number of pieces: base salary, performance pay, long-term incentive pay, clinical. He was a medical director, so that pay. It came through on various times. Each time it would have a minute from the board of directors. So it would say, pay Dr. Mazza X, and say what it was for. So I would have to have gone back over those, pulled them together, and then added it up. I mean, it was not brain surgery, but I would have had to have taken some time to do it.
And those various points, those minutes, which indicated, pay Dr. Mazza X, salary, those were all kept in a record that you could access.
Absolutely. That was kept. Every minute that came from the board was kept in a human resource file of his own.
Okay.
Locked.
Okay.
And those minutes, were they from the board as a whole or from a subcommittee that dealt with HR issues?
It depended. When it came to sort of yearly changes, it probably would come from the whole board as a board minute. Sometimes it would come from the compensation committee of the board. So it depended on the issue, but each one had a very distinct minute. It would come from the corporate secretary to me, and it would be very clear.
So the corporate secretary was the person who took the board minutes?
Correct.
And then actioned them off?
Correct.
And who was that?
Lynn Taylor.
Lynn Taylor. Okay. And so let's say we talk about the compensation subcommittee, I think you called it, or the compensation.
Correct.
Would Dr. Mazza ever sit on those board meetings and those committee meetings? When you saw the minutes, could you see who attended?
I only got the minute that would be specific to me. So I would I wouldn't see who the attendees were or what the discussion was. It would be very simply, please pay X to this much to X. So I don't know whether he was on it or not.
Did the recommendation or the decisions that were made by the compensation committee, did they have to be approved by the board as a whole? Or sometimes they would come directly from the compensation committee of the board without the full board knowledge?
I'm not sure, but I believe that all of the compensation committee work went through the board ultimately.
Would have gone through the board ultimately?
I believe so.
But as you've just testified, sometimes you would get a motion coming from the compensation committee that had to do with the base salary, the performance pay, the long-term pay, or the clinical director.
Correct. It would be more about the sort of stipends, not the salary. It would be sort of, pay him X amount as, actually it would come from the board. I think I may be incorrect in that it all came from the board.
Okay. When you talk about stipend, is this on top and above what made up his compensation?
No, but there were, as I said, a number of pieces. There was one year where there was an additional performance pay. There were a number of elements, if you will, to his overall salary.
Was that common to other people within the executive of Ornge to have a compensation made out of base salary, performance pay, long-term pay, and clinical director, I guess, only applies to people in the clinical
it
side?
was the rest of the senior team had base salary and performance pay, full stop.
Okay. Were you aware that Dr. Mazza also had loans from his employer?
Yes, I was.
How did you become aware of that?
I received a minute again from the board on more than one occasion, so it wasn't all at once, that said, please arrange or the board approves a loan of X amount of dollars to Dr. Mazza.
Do you remember when the first time you saw that?
No, I don't. But they seem to be within the last year.
Really?
Yes, we are. So, thank you very much for coming before the committee this afternoon.
Thank you.
And our next presenter is Mr. Bruce Wade. If you would like to come forward. Okay. Welcome, Mr. Wade. And just to confirm that you've received the letter for a witness appearing before the committee. Very well. Would you like to do an oath or an affirmation?
I'll take an oath. I'll take an oath.
Okay, very well. The clerk will have you swear an oath.
Yeah, perfect. So, Mr. Wade, do you solemnly swear the evidence you shall give to this committee touching the subject of the present inquiry should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Very well. And you have time for an opening statement, and then we'll go to questioning from the various parties.
First, before I begin my opening statement, I have to apologize. I'm under medication for a throat problem with an ENT right now. So if my voice fades in and out, I can barely speak. But I'm here. Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for your interest in the truth. My name, as you know, is Bruce Wade. When I was notified that I was called to testify, I emailed Ron McCurley, CEO of Ornge, to inform him and see if he had objection. We had a very good phone call where he let me know he did not have objection. Right from the start, I want you all to know I believe the Rhoda ambulance can be fixed. At this committee, you've heard testimony about missing millions, multiple shell companies, hiring of persons into positions they were not qualified to hold, alleged kickbacks, alleged political interference, and other nefarious dealings. You heard Mazza claim, quote, black spots in his memory when asked how a speedboat came to be purchased, yet go into incredible details about communications center computer servers with less than 2% memory left. You heard straight from Mazza himself that in his words, he always did what was in the best interest of Ornge. That statement alone, in my opinion, shows he and his sycophant executives...
Pull that mic down a little closer there. That's great.
...that he and his executives were not working for the best interest of patients and taxpayers. Thankfully, they're gone. Across our system, we rejoiced when the auditor delved further into Ornge. It was then we thought reasonable people would step in and stop all helicopter pilot and engineer transfers into Ornge once it became evident just how bad things really were. Many of us read the Auditor General's report and understood the serious content. I'd like to personally thank our auditor for the excellent work that he and his dedicated staff did in their audit of Ornge while under Mazza's reign. I don't see him in the room, unfortunately, but I'd also like to thank him for clearly reporting the management culture of fear and intimidation which was rampant in the Ornge system. To give the committee a sense of the front-line reality, I want to quote some of my colleagues. From a medic, I quote, "Give them hell at the committee about Thunder Bay. We in Northwestern Ontario are tired of being treated like the redhead stepchild." From a helicopter pilot, I quote, "Rotary wing aircraft service communities that do not have airports, backcountry bush, highway accidents, plane crashes, and all locations in between, places no plane can service. We respond to every possible type of medical emergency that can come up. In my 20-plus years as an EMS pilot in Ontario, I can assure you that we have saved lives and reduced a lot of suffering. This is what the public expects of us and counts on us to do when called upon. When we do not have paramedics, we cannot do our job. If you didn't have any house fires, would you remove the firemen from the fire trucks?" From a medic, I quote, "We have more staff we don't need, more complaints of managerial incompetence and malevolence, and less ability to tell others what's going on. We have a management structure blaming us for the fiscal woes of a company that couriered apples across the province for PR campaigns." From a helicopter engineer, "This whole system is beyond ridiculous." From a pilot and medic during lunch one day, when I say pilot, I'm referring to Rotary side, "If he didn't waste $600,000 on MBAs for his friends, we'd have more trained paramedics to properly crew our helicopter in Thunder Bay." from another helicopter pilot. I used to be proud of what I did flying medevac. Now I don't tell anyone. Mr. Chair, honorable members of the committee, I'm not here as a disgraced former executive of Ornge, or a recipient of one of their MBAs, or a public servant called upon to offer insight from their perspective, or a high-priced lawyer who worked for Ornge, nor any other person who has lined their pockets at the expense of the air ambulance system. I'm a frontline helicopter pilot. I fly medevac. I worked as a helicopter pilot in service of the public and Ontario's air ambulance system since the fall of 2001. I'm based on the Thunder Bay Trauma Helicopter, which has faithfully served the taxpayers of Northwestern Ontario for decades. Today, my focus will be on operations on the front lines of Northwestern Ontario. For us, this is not a business case. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not a political issue. It's not a game. It's lives at stake. That's what this focuses on. It's lives at stake, folks. Across this province on a daily basis, pilots fly our ambulance helicopters into challenging situations. Paramedics treat seriously injured accident victims, and the engineers do their utmost to maintain the helicopters. We are the air ambulance system. We need the resources to do our jobs. If you're not familiar with the vastness of Northern Ontario, consider this. If you got in your car here at the provincial legislature today, it would take you 17 and a half hours of driving to get to Thunder Bay. It takes about 13 hours to drive from Sudbury to Thunder Bay. It's about 1,000 kilometers on the two-lane Trans-Canada Highway. It takes about 6 hours to drive from Thunder Bay to Kenora, another 500 kilometers on the two-lane Trans-Canada Highway. In that drive, you cross a time zone and still have at least another hour past Kenora just to get to the Manitoba border. For almost 3 years since the very first fixed wing was added to the Thunder Bay base, Ornge has stripped the medics from the only trauma helicopter between Sudbury and Kenora, a distance of approximately 1,500 kilometers. All of us have raised this issue with Ornge management, old and new. Some have gone to their MPPs. Some went to the press. I went to the Minister of Health. All of us had high hope once the story got out about routinely grounded medevac helicopter, we would see a resumption in proper medic staffing. It still hasn't happened. A trauma helicopter continually grounded without medics is unconscionable. Some could argue negligent. When the first plane was put into service in Thunder Bay to support the cardiac care unit at Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Centre, we were told it would be 3 days per week and our medics would be on standby, not removed from the helicopter. After a period of time, Ornge changed the rules for interfacility transfers with standing offer agreement air carriers, claiming those medics were not trained to a high enough standard an Ornge aircraft would conduct those transfers. Since Ornge trains all air medics in the province, that argument was invalid. In my opinion, that move at that time was solely designed as a money transfer from Ornge in one company into another Ornge company. Eventually, a second plane was put into service in Thunder Bay, but only one additional medic crew was upstaffed. Each of you can do the math on this. There's 2 airplanes, 1 trauma helicopter, 2 crews of paramedics. That's it. This unconscionable staffing decision was made by persons who are no longer with Ornge. The new leadership is aware of this ongoing situation, still nothing's been done. I'd like to read into the record some of the locations only a helicopter can service quickly, thus saving lives and reducing suffering, but that would take up the rest of my opening time. I do have a sheet of paper with those names on it. If you live, work, or travel through any of these areas, you've got no hope of a golden hour of medical airlift. The problem with removing the medics from the Thunder Bay Trauma Helicopter is actually greater than it first appears. Not only do the taxpayers of our region or travelers on our highways have no medevac airlift in time of need, but the dominoes cascade into the Kenora region as well. The crews in Kenora are called upon almost daily to dispatch on flights into the Thunder Bay region, thus leaving their area with no coverage. As a sample of the massive lack of proper medevac coverage in Northwestern Ontario, I've got approximately the last 2 months of calls Kenora has received to dispatch into the Thunder Bay region. I have copies. We need medics. In the last 12 months, as the transition date from the Canadian helicopters into Ornge for each new rotor base grew closer, more pilots left. Approximately 20 of the most highly trained, experienced rotor pilots in Canada left the system. This represents the single largest exodus of aviation professionals in the entire 30-plus year history of the air ambulance program in Ontario. More are going to leave. About 11 helicopter engineers also left. I and others have chosen to stay and help restore helicopter EMS system to its proper service levels. We've never seen such high levels of medic understaffing or downstaffing of the helicopters ever in the entire history of the air ambulance program. In front of me and available for your perusal are the last 8 years worth of daily pilot journals from the Thunder Bay helicopter base alone. In those journals, day by day, shift by shift, it tells you who was flying, what calls they did, what medics were on, if we were in or out of service, and if there was any staff there. It's all here, folks. 8 years worth. Years ago, Mazda insisted on starting his own helicopter operation, claiming they could do it cheaper. As a matter of fact, part of the sales pitch for the bond offering was an outline that principal and interest would be paid through cost savings by operating and maintaining their own helicopters. Nope. It was recently testified by an Ornge executive that the current cost of operation of the helicopter system is, quote, no more than the previous vendor. By that testimony, it isn't cheaper. From our first-hand experience, helicopters aren't staffed properly, shifts go unfilled, and aircraft sit grounded. From Thunder Bay, we used to be able to airlift cardiac patients to St. Luke's Hospital in the U.S. because we had all the appropriate operating certificates from the FAA. Ornge still does not have approvals for the rotary wing aircraft. It was recently announced that 3 bases, Thunder Bay, Kenora, and Moosonee, will continue to operate the S-76s for the foreseeable future. But we don't have GPS operation certificates from Transport Canada to conduct GPS approaches with this equipment. We used to. As you all know, the previous vendor was Canadian Helicopters, one of the top aviation firms in the world. They properly staffed the aircraft, retained dedicated pilots, and had highly dedicated engineering and enjoyed excellent labor relations with their crews and their union. All necessary international operations approvals were in place. All necessary Canadian operations approvals were in place, and I believe they maintained a 97+% dispatch availability rate for decades. In spite of the problems,
Done the intro, or
I've got 4 paragraphs.
okay, go ahead.
In spite of the problems, I firmly believe the helicopter air ambulance can be fixed. We want our voices heard, our recommendations enacted, and our helicopter EMS system working as it should. Recently, an Associate Vice President of Corporate Communications emailed our pilot union chairman asking him for a quote to be used in the Good News Progress Report. Suffice it to say, he declined, stating we aren't seeing any progress. I challenged members of this committee to unite as one and make the following immediate demands to the Premier and Minister of Health to give us the resources we desperately need. Number 1, all EMS helicopters across the province are properly staffed with 2 paramedics 24 hours a day without exception. They used to be, and the Ambulance Act, in fact, might require this. Number 2, allocation of resources be focused on the front lines. Number 3, the performance agreement gets some teeth with proper system of financial penalties put in place as a deterrent to downstaffing of medics or pilots. And I'll skip number 4. I fight medevac for very personal reasons. If even one death occurs because no helicopter can respond and from a lack of proper staffing and a coroner's inquest is called, I can take comfort knowing that I tried for the best interest of Ontario and my conscience is clear. I'll be able to look myself in the mirror and know I've done everything I possibly can to restore helicopter ambulance service to Northwest Ontario region. I want to be able to do my job as do my colleagues on the engineering and the medic side as well. In closing, Ontario can be proud of the helicopter engineers, the medics, the fixed-wing pilots, the fixed-wing engineers, and of course my helicopter pilot colleagues across the province. We do make a difference in people's lives. We need your help. I hope I can answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that opening statement. We'll move to the opposition. Mr. Klees, 20 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wade, for being here. I'd like to just start off by getting some context of your experience as a helicopter pilot. Could you just summarize briefly for us how long you've been a helicopter pilot and when you started with Ornge and how long you've been there?
I started flying in approximately 1995, and I was with 2 other firms prior to moving to Canadian Helicopters on the EMS program in 2001. For me, that was the goal I had when I started flying helicopters, and I was determined to get there. I've always said that, in my opinion, flying medevac in this province is a pinnacle, and it's something I want to be able to do for the remainder of my flying career.
Sir, you've been very forthright over the last number of months since these committee hearings have taken place and since the issue of Ornge was in the public domain. You've never hesitated to put your name to an email. I've noticed a number that you have sent to members of the committee and addressed to the Minister of Health.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you on behalf of this committee, in fact, on behalf of all members of the legislature and the public, for doing that. I know a lot of your colleagues have felt intimidated, and that's understandable.
Yeah.
And so you've made recommendations. You've drawn our attention and the attention of the Minister of Health to the failings. You've also made specific recommendations. I'd like to know from you, what have you heard back from the Minister of Health or Mr. McCurley to any of those emails that you have sent and recommendations that you've made?
I do have some emails here. Actually, I received a letter back from the Minister of Health herself on April 2nd. I have copies of it here if anybody wishes to see it. But the opening paragraph is, "Thank you for your email about Ornge. I want to know, I share your concerns about what has happened at Ornge under its former leadership. Thank you, too, for your Thank you, too, for informing the Ministry of your interest in being of assistance. I'm particularly interested in your willingness to serve on the Board of Directors." And it goes on for 2 pages about some of the progress, organizational changes and things of that nature that had taken place. And I appreciate that back from the Minister, and Mr. McCurley was copied on this letter. He is aware of it.
Would any members want a copy of that response, of his letter, that letter? No?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I have copies here if anybody wants them. So. As I said before,
I'm missing the conversation. Probably not the speaker's fault, but I think if you could get a little bit closer to the mic, I could understand.
Sure. Sorry, I'm actually on a medication right now for this, so.
So you have a response from the Minister who thanks you for your offer of help.
Yep.
It's copied to Mr. McCurley.
Correct.
What happened?
I haven't seen a lot happen.
Has anything happened?
On the front lines, from our perspective, not really.
So I'm talking specifically about your offer of help. Has Mr. McCurley been in touch with you or anyone else to say, Mr. Wade, thank you for your offer of help. Please come in and see us. Tell us what it is that you're recommending. Has any of that taken place?
Not as an individual, but we have had discussions at the base with a variety of individuals who have come through. I believe it was around the 9th or 10th of February, I'm not sure of the date, where Mr. McCurley came to Thunder Bay as his first base visit, along with Patricia Volker, Patrice Marin, and Patricia Lang. And they talked to each of the various groups. At that time, we were, of course, still with Canadian Helicopters, and we had a very productive hour with them. But since that time, as far as continuing discussion, no.
Have you noticed any of the recommendations that were made by yourself or other people on the front line in the meetings? Have you noticed any of those recommendations being implemented?
I just want to refer back to an email here just to make sure I have the correct answer, because I don't think so. I don't think we've seen any. Yes, here it is. February 9th was, I sent Mr. McCurley an email to summarize the meeting that we had had with him. And let's see. No.
So none of the recommendations
No.
that were made by the front lines have been implemented by Ornge?
None of the recommendations that we had presented have been implemented, yes.
This morning, members of the committee were sent an email. Mr. McNeely took great length to read this into the record. It comes from a Paul Eric Binderup, who is an Ornge PC-12 captain. In his letter, he makes a point of saying, and I'll quote from his letter, "We have been overwhelmed by the support we have received from individuals like the Honourable Deb Matthews and interim CEO Ron McCurley, citing that things are wonderful, that he and his colleagues in the fixed-wing operations at Ornge Global Air are happy men and women," and went out of his way to make the minister look very good. You're on the front line.
Mm-hmm. I've been on the front line of this, I believe, longer than Mr. Bindercup.
And so I just like some balance here because I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
The minister has castigated me today here in committee as someone who is disparaging of the front lines, as someone who has insulted the front lines of our air ambulance service, and as someone who just doesn't seem to care. And she said that's what she's hearing from the front lines. You're on the front line.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like your opinion, first of all, is in fact that's the case.
No.
And what do paramedics and pilots think about the job that we're doing as a committee here, and specifically because the minister went at me directly on this, what does the front line think about the job that I'm doing here on their behalf?
Well, as in any situation, there'll be pros and cons, of course. But I can speak for the helicopter side. Kudos. I can't speak for the fixed-wing colleagues. There are some tremendous people there. They do some really good work. Unfortunately, we're two different worlds. The rotary wing side of this is very senior people, very experienced people. This is a pinnacle position, multi-engine IFR helicopters, whether it's in medevac or offshore oil. And we see failings in the system, and we think the committee has been doing good work to try and uncover these failings.
I want to make the point, Mr. Wade, that while I have been hard on the system, and while I've had a good deal to say about the lack of resources, at no time did I ever impugn individuals on the front line.
Absolutely
In fact,
not.
the reason that we're doing what we're doing is because, out of respect of the work that's being done on the front lines, we want to ensure that they have the proper resources, that they have the respect of the Minister of Health and all those who have an obligation to ensure they're properly supported. I'd be interested to know, and I will just switch a little bit here in terms of an issue that I was discussing previously with Ms. Beecher, and that's the whole issue of resourcing and training of paramedics, the whole concept of how Ornge was handed essentially not only the monopoly to deliver air ambulance service in Ontario, but also on the training side. What is your assessment of how well Ornge has done in terms of training their paramedics and training their pilots?
The paramedics as a whole, and this is only because I work alongside them daily, have complained for quite some time that I think the term speed of the training was not adequate. I know of one individual paramedic who spent 5 years trying to get certified as a critical care paramedic, and I don't remember in prior years this ever being a problem getting people trained. I don't know what the problem is within their training system. On the pilot side of it, up until just recently, of course, we were all working for Canadian Helicopters on the rotary side. and every single one of us would go to flight safety in Florida. We'd be there for essentially a week and do all your simulator work in level D full motion simulators, similar to what Air Canada would use for their 777s. And now the bulk of the pilots are, of course, going to New Jersey on the AW139 simulator. Again, one of the most complex simulators in the world. What we have noticed is that on the S-76 side of it, in particular, the training seems to have slowed down. We're hearing rumors that we'll be doing it on the aircraft, which is kind of regressive by about 10 or 15 years, because you can't do the full range of emergency procedures that one would normally expect to anticipate in air. On the 139 side, it's all in New Jersey. It's a very extensive program, and it's terribly expensive. And that is a superior program.
Mr. Wade, you made reference to Canadian helicopters, and I referred earlier when I was having a discussion with Ms. Beecher in terms of the kind of efficiency and response to calls when the service was being provided by Canadian helicopters and Voyageur, and that rating was 98%. And that if, in fact, there couldn't be a response, if they couldn't respond either by a helicopter or by a fixed-wing aircraft, that there would be a financial penalty.
That's my understanding,
that the
yes.
carrier had to pay to the Ministry of Health.
Yes.
We now, of course, have a situation where there's no such accountability.
Which is one of my recommendations.
So my question to you, knowing, and you may have seen the testimony from Mr. Tom Rothfels, who, when he was sitting in your chair, said he is convinced that the core competency is simply not there at Ornge to operate the airline side of it, the aircraft side. Is it your opinion that one of the fixes of the problem would be to restore that helicopter operation back into the hands of whether it's Canadian helicopters, or at the very least put that up for a public tender so that we can have some bidding into that contract to ensure we get the core competency to deliver that service?
I would say it is, because a helicopter is an extraordinarily technologically advanced piece of gear. It's not something that an organization with no aviation history in helicopters can just pick up overnight and carry on with. It's being demonstrated daily, unfortunately. And I work there.
I just have one last question in this round, and that is, it relates to an email that you sent, and it was addressed to Deb Matthews and Mr. Gravel and Mr. Morrow, Ms. Jelena, and Mr. Singh. And it was in response to a release put out by Ornge, in which they say, and I quote, Ornge continues to add to its frontline staff team to ensure the best possible patient care. There is now a team of 217 paramedics at Ornge. That's 10 more medics than at this time last year. That was in June 7th. You responded to that, and you were not very pleased about the spin that was being put on that. In fact, you say, and I'll quote, the actual facts remain. Medics are routinely, chronically, and without regard to proper medevac capability removed or just not available for the trauma helicopter in Thunder Bay. All of you know this has been going on for nearly 2 years. We are fully grounded, without medics. Ornge claims to the press and others the base is staffed 24 hours per day. This statement, while technically correct, is less than honest. End of quote. I would like you to just comment on that and tell me, when people like yourself and other frontline staff see this kind of communication come from the new management team at Ornge, what is it telling you?
In Thunder Bay, it's not met with a great deal of joy because we've been pushing for years to have proper staffing levels. And It's disappointing because the recommendations are there. We know from the front lines what has to be done. It's disappointing. I'm hoping that we do see progress. I'm hoping that by being here today, the message once again gets through to the right people, that we do need the support in the front end. We do need these helicopters staffed properly. And we'd like to engage in good, honest, open dialogue and build a relationship of trust, but it's not helping.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the NDP. Ms. Jellens.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down. Welcome to Queen's Park. I would like you to try to do a little memory exercise there. Feel free to refer to any of your notes if that helps. When would you say that people started to report problem with staffing in Thunder Bay?
It would have been about 3 years ago, approximately, when the very first airplane was put into service. I don't have the exact date, but I'm sure with all the journals here, we could probably find it. Yeah.
So the first time that Ornge purchased its own aircraft and put it into service?
Correct.
Okay, so at the same time as they did that, they changed the staffing level?
Yes. Well, they didn't technically change the staffing level. They added the airplane and the fixed wing colleagues who fly that. What they didn't do was, for a period of time, is increase the number of paramedics on shift. Initially, the aircraft was announced publicly as a support to the the cardiac care unit in the Thunder Bay Hospital. Mm-hmm. And it was on standby 3 days a week to bring patients, I'm assuming, to Southern Ontario for additional medical care. So the medics were on standby for the airplane if the need arose, but they stayed with the helicopter. Eventually, they moved the paramedics over to another facility, and the focus started shifting on staffing the airplane first and leaving the helicopter as a secondary tool, which essentially is quite useless without paramedics. So it was about 2.5 to 3 years ago.
And has things varied since? Did it ever get better?
No.
It stayed the same?
Yeah.
And who were aware of this?
Well, everybody in Thunder Bay, pilots and paramedics alike, plus we all raised issues with, I went to my employer, which at that time, of course, was CHL. I know the paramedics, almost without exception, were raising this issue with Ornge management, and nothing changed.
Okay. Since we've had, I'll stick with who knew about it. Did you ever have an opportunity to go outside of your supervisor and tell upper management at Ornge what was going on and that you didn't agree with the understaffing?
Not really. Ornge didn't really want to hear from us at all.
Ah. and you knew
it's
this?
changed now because we're actually there.
And you knew that they didn't want to hear from you. How did you know that?
We were told in no uncertain terms throughout the system that we were essentially there to fly and don't ask questions. It was nothing in the form of a memo. It was just a very common understanding that they didn't want to hear from us.
Go ahead.
Can you compare the model and pros and cons between the model initially, which was to outsource the aircraft side completely, and the new model, which was to integrate the aircraft side and to have it? Pros and cons, if you could just kind of sketch that out really quickly, if there's any benefit to integrating it, or if it was only a con.
I'm trying to be fair. I haven't seen a benefit to integrate it. Maybe the benefit would be that all staff now works for one organization, perhaps. It's never been an issue before as far as relationships go or team cooperation goes. But from the efficiencies side, as a private contractor operating the helicopters, we were staffed. And those helicopters were available 24 hours a day, staffed, not sitting in a hangar with pilots watching a movie upstairs because we don't have any medics. And that, to me, is the single biggest frustration that we have, that we're dealing with. Put medics on the helicopters, all of them, 24 hours a day, and most of these problems start going away. It's lives here. It's not a game.
And if you could just, I mean, so that's one issue.
Yeah.
Are there any other issues still ongoing besides this issue of the staffing with respect to having aircraft available but not having enough staff to actually put them in the air and save lives? Are there other issues that are still ongoing that haven't been rectified?
Yeah, there's things that are starting to happen recently since we all transitioned in.
What are those issues?
Well, pilots now, specifically thinking Thunder Bay, have on occasion been picked up by a private charter and flown to Moosonee to fly that helicopter and leave the Thunder Bay base completely uncovered. That shouldn't be happening.
Is that happening on a regular basis systemically, or is that a one-off thing?
Well, it happened to me personally in May, twice. And it's, as far as I'm aware, I was talking to some colleagues yesterday that this happened on one or two occasions just this week.
And so what is the problem then? What's going on? Why is that happening?
We think it's understaffing. It has to be. There's just not enough pilots to fly the helicopters.
So now they're outsourcing on a one-off basis to get private companies to fly.
Yeah, it's one of the SOA carriers who was contracted on a few occasions to pick the pilots up at the beginning of a shift and fly us to Moosonee, and then bring us home at the end of the shift.
So that the base in Moosonee would have pilots.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no question. Yeah.
Otherwise, if you hadn't gone, there wouldn't have been a pilot.
There wouldn't have been pilots there. And by moving us from Thunder Bay to Moosonee, it staffed that helicopter and left this one grounded. And this has happened on a number of occasions. I don't recall ever having this situation before. And this is because so many people have left. And the people that have recently been hired, I stand to be corrected on this, but I don't think any of the new hires are yet online. Perhaps maybe one or two are. I don't know. But we're very short-staffed as far as frontline operational pilots right now.
You wrote to the minister explaining your concerns, and you received a letter back.
Yeah.
Did you ever communicate any of your concerns before, perhaps a year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, I would have to say I did. To whom, I wouldn't recall, but I've been fairly vocal on trying to maintain services in the Northwest region for a long time.
And was it someone in the government that you expressed your concern to, or in what manner did you express
Honestly,
your concern?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I have been very vocal, trying to keep the service levels up. And
okay. In terms of your dealing, in terms of just your own experience, do you see ministry, or have you seen ministry folks come to inspect the sites, to do some oversight, to see what's going on, to ensure that the standards are maintained, to ensure that staffing is the level it should be?
This spring, there was an individual through on the aviation side. His name escapes me, unfortunately. He used to be with the Ministry of Natural Resources. He may very well still be there. Ken Wong, that was the gentleman's name. And he did whatever audit metrics that he does. We didn't talk to him. He just came and did whatever he did and carried on.
And where was that?
That was in Thunder Bay.
Thunder Bay?
Yeah.
And that was one time in the spring?
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago.
This year?
This year, yeah.
Okay. And besides that, are you aware of any other time that ministry officials came to do an audit, or to just check up on the standards or what's going on at the base in Thunder Bay?
As a frontline pilot, I wouldn't even pay attention.
You would not?
No.
Okay.
If the ministry people had been through every day, I wouldn't even realize it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Just because this is, they don't, nobody comes and audits locally the pilots?
No. It's the systems that are in place, perhaps their record keeping, their policies or procedures. things along those lines. But as far as the operational pilots, we're done by Transport Canada every year, separately.
And you report to Transport Canada for every time you fly?
No. The pilots, after a flight, enter the flight data into the ornge system, into their computer system, so they have all the information of start, stop times, where we went to, how many people were on board, things of that nature. There's also a operational flight plan that's maintained. That's a Transport Canada requirement, and that's maintained in the offices for a specific period of time. I don't know how long they have to keep them. Transport can take a random sampling of those at any time. But as far as reporting flights to Transport, no, that's not the case.
So you reported into the ornge database?
Yeah.
Okay. And has this changed since you went to the Augusta helicopters?
I fly the S-76 still, Thunder Bay, Moosonee, and Kenora. All the other bases are on the AW-139, and we all use the same computer software, same terminals. So their flight data entry, I'm going to make the assumption, is exactly the same that we're putting into our system.
Okay. And there is not more data that is updated directly from the helicopter, from one, you haven't transitioned to the new helicopter?
No, I've done the ground school, but our training was canceled because it was announced that we're not getting it.
So you will not be getting the new helicopter?
For the foreseeable future was what we were told, and we don't know what that means. We would have to speculate it would be at least a year, just because of how busy the simulators are in New Jersey. And this is an extensive program of transition, so we can't see it happening in the next 12 months.
And those are the simulator from Augusta?
Correct.
Okay. Did we know about this when we planned the transition, or did you just find out about this recently?
That's fairly recent. I don't know the exact date, but Mr. Feely came to Thunder Bay to hold a 1-hour meeting with us and tell us and our Kenora colleagues on a conference call that we weren't getting that helicopter for the foreseeable future, which was met, quite frankly, with no surprise from any of us. And I think he was somewhat surprised that we weren't upset or shocked, because we didn't expect we'd get it anyway. Northwestern Ontario for the last 3 years has been substantially neglected, and it's unfortunate.
So to summarize your concerns,
Yeah.
I mean, in putting it bluntly, one is staffing concerns that there's not adequate medics to put the aircraft in the air.
Number one.
2 is that there's not adequate helicopters to service the northern Ontario, and helicopters are necessary because of the terrain and the distances. There's certain places and locations that a fixed wing just can't be the option. You need to have a helicopter to go in.
Partially. The numbers of helicopters is not an issue. We have more helicopters now than we did before.
Okay.
There's the 10 Augustas and there's 6 S-76s available. The problem is we don't have enough pilots to fly them.
I see.
I actually have, here it is. This, you can have copies of this as well. This is actually the rotor wing pilot seniority list, July 10th of this year. There's 75 names on it, and I'm going to guess that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 probably aren't even online yet. We're short in Thunder Bay. Kenora is critically short. Moosonee is also short because of having to fly pilots around the province to cover. I do not know what the staffing levels are in southern Ontario.
Do you feel that northern Ontario is being neglected?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And that the people of northern Ontario are not receiving the service, the quality of service they should be receiving because of staffing decisions related to the north of Ontario?
Yes.
I want to come back a little bit to the data entry that we were talking about. The ministry said that the data that they were receiving from Ornge was inflated, that Ornge was reporting more flight leg than actually happened, was reporting more transport than actually happened. Were you ever told to change the way you reported what you did?
No. No, we've always, as far as I can remember, have always entered the same type of information, a flight number, a patient number, to from locations, and it's also all the flight data records and things are. I just pull one out at random. This is the same thing. Oh, yeah, and I pull out the pages where there's no medics on staff, so we don't do anything. Pilot names. This has never changed. None of this reporting, whether it's this book or the data we enter into the computers, has ever changed. It's just a different name on the system. That's all.
So, how could those reports not be accurate?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know, because we enter the data as we finish our flights and paperwork.
And same thing with the medics?
Yeah, same thing with the medics. It's all the same. It's never changed.
And this, whether it was paper form and has gone to a computer-based, you enter.
Yeah.
Can you imagine why the data is different now than it was before, or have you seen the numbers for your base to see if it's any different than what you remember?
I have not seen any printed reports of the information that we enter, with the exception of aircraft out of service reports, which we can't access any longer, which tells you how long an aircraft has been out of service and for what reason. But as far as the flight data goes, there's no reason it should be any different. The only way to do it would take a year's worth of reports, if it could be generated, and compare them with the daily journals, because the same stuff that's in here is in the flight data report. It shouldn't be any different.
3 minutes.
You've talked about the email that you have written to the ministry.
Yeah.
You said that you have been fairly vocal for the last 3 years. Has anybody that you've talked to ever answered back?
I did get the letter back from the minister.
That's from this summer, but from before?
Prior to that, not that I can recall. I believe I got an email recently from Michael Gravel, who thanked me for being a passionate advocate, and he supports what we're trying to do. But as far as prior to calling it the story breaking, I don't think I did.
Were you surprised when you saw what happened at Ornge, when you saw the headlines in the paper? Did you see it coming?
We saw a lot of it coming, but quite frankly, some of the stuff that was reported was so far beyond what any of us were ever anticipating seeing. It was flabbergasting. We had no idea the depth that this was going to go. We saw it from the front lines. We saw the deterioration of service. It was a shock, an absolute shock.
When you say that you saw a deterioration of service, are you talking the deterioration you saw 3 years ago that stayed the same, or was it getting worse and worse before December when it hit the front page of the paper?
It was still eroding, and on the operational side, not the numbers of medics and staffing, because that got to the bottom and has stayed there. But the numbers of pilots, the closer we got to having to move to Ornge, the more and more left. So the service erosion really started a downward trend as far as being able to put pilots in seats and keeping aircraft staffed. So that compounded the situation.
But although you never did the transition to the new aircraft, it was doing the transition from Canadian helicopter to Ornge that scared a lot of pilots away.
Yeah.
although they were not going to necessarily going to change aircraft, because, as you say, Moosonee, yourself, and Kenora have not changed.
It was strictly an operator change that was the impetus for people's departure. And a lot of those who left had been trained on the 139, so they took that an extraordinarily valuable endorsement with them and have gone international to other operators. Yeah.
So was this something about, like, they hadn't worked for Ornge yet? How did they know that they were not going to like it?
We have worked alongside Ornge for years, and we witnessed the intimidation tactics that they used against the medics, and we witnessed the frustrations they were having. You've got to remember that it doesn't matter if it's XYZ running the medics and ABC running the helicopters. We're one crew. We are a very tight group. We operate in very challenging environments, and we talk to each other. So the frustration level that was evident there, and the tactics that were being used, and the...
Can you give me an example of an intimidation tactic that you saw or heard of?
I'd rather not, because it would potentially identify an individual who would like to remain anonymous. But there were threats against people's employment from individuals within the old structure.
So
you are out of time unless you wanted to.
I'll borrow a few minutes from my next round. So it would be their supervisor or management that would threaten their own employees?
On occasion, yeah. Yeah. I think that's all. I think that's gone now. I think that's changed. I think that's a very positive step there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very well. Move to the government. Ms. Sandals.
Yes, thank you very much, and welcome, Mr. Wade, and thank you for coming in here, because it is very helpful for us to get the frontline perspective. Just to be clear, so you flew for Canadian Helicopters Limited for 11 years?
Approximately, yeah.
And then when did you actually start with Ornge?
Our base was transitioned into Ornge on, I believe it was the 22nd of March, 23rd of March.
So March 2012. So
correct.
You've been there for 4 or 5 months, 3-4 months.
But remember, we're working alongside them for years, yeah. Yeah.
And you're still flying the S-76, but you started training. So when you first arrived in March, then did you, because you said you'd had some training, the preliminary training for the new helicopters.
Right. Last year, we were actually scheduled, our base was scheduled for the Augusta simulators, and that training was canceled, as was Kenora's. And then they reinstated it again in the fall. Kenora had a ground school, then we had a ground school, and I'm not sure the date of the ground school, but I think it was sometime in February.
That was last fall, 2011.
It was reinstated this in 2012. Reinstated for the ground school component, which we had, I believe it was February, April, sometime between February and April.
So in fact, the ground training for the new Augusta helicopters actually was while you were still with Canadian Helicopters Limited in anticipation that you would transfer?
No, we'd actually transferred into Ornge at that time. And yeah, it was after the 22nd of March. It was sometime in
so it might have been
April
then,
May,
the first, early on in your experience with Ornge, you did the preliminary ground school training, and now you're waiting for the simulator. Okay.
That's right.
And it's clear from the conversation that you've written a lot of emails to various people. Unfortunately, my colleagues and I here haven't seen any of those till yesterday, because they all went to the opposition. Yeah. They didn't come to us. Right. So we're sort of working, but not in terms of the committee members. In terms of the committee members, the mailing list was quite selective, none of my colleagues have seen them on this side of the table. So we're just trying to get up to speed.
Sure.
But one of the things that I noticed that you seem to be concerned about, and this is actually one that I think mainly went to the local Liberal MPPs on June the 13th of this year, and talks about on June 24th, Ornge is making a huge operations announcement. All indications are the removal of the Thunder Bay trauma helicopter will be among those announcements. Now, clearly that didn't happen,
right.
So I'm wondering...
You need time to find that email?
Well, I don't believe I actually have it with me. But it's okay. It's okay. Carry on.
Yeah, and I wasn't going to read any more of it.
No worries.
But you're not disagreeing with the idea that you were concerned that...
Oh, very much so.
That the trauma helicopter would be canceled.
Yeah.
It didn't get canceled.
Yeah.
Why was it that you were convinced it would be canceled, and you were obviously writing to the minister and local MPPs?
As you well saw as an advocate to keep the system going.
Yeah, and so what was it that made you think that it was going to be canceled?
Well, there was a meeting conducted in Timmins by some senior management where operational discussions had taken place. And it was mentioned in that meeting that there was a possible helicopter being removed, potential helicopter removal. And later on, there was another meeting in Kenora, which Mr. McCurley, I'm getting this secondhand, I was not at the meeting, where Mr. McCurley gave them a hypothetical that, in his opinion, Thunder Bay would probably lose its helicopter and those pilots would be absorbed into the other bases in the system. And the premise from that was because they were looking at the last 2 or 3 years worth of usage data. So if I had come in January or February and had been looking at the last 2 or 3 years worth of usage data, I would probably draw a similar conclusion. But the usage data is completely flawed because we're not used, because we don't have medics, because they won't staff the helicopter properly. So that's where the alarm bells were raised, and that's why the alarm bells were raised.
So in this case, then, it would appear then that Mr. McCurley was meeting with people in Timmins, meeting with people in Kenora, meeting with people at the various bases, and they said, well, you need to look at the data that way, and the decision was reconsidered. That sounds to me like listening to the feedback on the ground. And what I keep hearing you saying to the others, well, there's no point in talking to people because they won't listen.
Well, at one point, there was 0 point of talking to anybody. Now, I will always give credit where credit is due. There have been a couple of individuals that have been brought into the system, I have not personally talked with them, that seem to know what is the right thing to do. And they seem to be starting to pay some attention. However, having said that, you can listen for ages, but until we physically start seeing proper staffing, we might as well be talking to the doorway.
But what I think I just heard you say was that you thought that it was going to be canceled. In the end, that in fact it wasn't canceled, that people seem to have listened and said, okay, let's have a relook at the data.
I'm hoping that's the case.
And that there was some action in a way that you would want the action to have gone. Because what I'm having a bit of a problem dealing with is we're getting very mixed messages. We've heard from a frontline paramedic today who said you know, there are more paramedics available. He was talking about a different base than you.
Sure.
And he said, but we have seen the staffing go up from paramedics. We've heard by email from Thunder Bay fixed wing pilot, in fact, a whole bunch of fixed wing pilots who are saying, gee, it's gotten a whole bunch better. And I hear you saying, no, it's gotten worse.
It has not
or
gotten
it
better.
hasn't gotten any better.
It has not gotten better. The fixed-wing aircraft are properly staffed. The medics come in, they're dispatched on an airplane. The second crew comes in, they're dispatched on an airplane. There's no third crew coming in. That helicopter stays grounded. If you want to look at this book, it shows you every single shift for 2012, and it will show you when there was medics on and when there was no medics for the helicopter. It's not gotten better on the rotary side. The fixed-wing side is great. I think they're doing a tremendous job. I really do. But we can also do a very admirable job. We can save lives. We can get into places that nobody else can get into. Just this week, there was a call to a bush scene where it was a cooperative effort with the single medic on the helicopter, critical care medic by himself, and our 2 pilots that got that helicopter into a location they should never have been able to go into to get somebody that had an accident and had been out in the bush for hours before being found and got them to the trauma center. Had that one medic not been turned around on the plane to come back to Thunder Bay, there's a very strong probability that that individual would have died in the bush. So it's not gotten better from the rotary perspective. From the fixed wing side, kudos to my colleagues. They're doing great work.
What I think I hear you saying is that when it's appropriate to dispatch a helicopter, that people are making an effort to make sure that the helicopter gets dispatched. That when it's necessary to get the helicopter
in that one
in
instance, it just happened to have a situation where they were only 10 minutes away and they could turn the plane around. That's one example. There's many other examples where we go to the hospital on a call and drop a patient off, and the land medics and say, why weren't you guys at the accident on such and such a highway last Tuesday? We were there. We didn't get a call. We had no medics. So the only way you can guarantee that the only trauma helicopter in 1,500 kilometers is properly operated and properly utilized is to have the paramedics on board all the time. They need a third crew of medics in Thunder Bay. We don't need to reduce a shift of medics from the airplanes. We need another shift of medics to staff the third aircraft, which is the helicopter.
So, because you see, and this is where I'm getting really confused, because in this email that now I'm looking at one that you actually sent on Boxing Day, which is the first one that I've seen, but there may have been some before that, I don't know, because as I say, we weren't getting them. But the first one I've seen is one that you sent on Boxing Day to the minister, and in this case copied the opposition. And the request at that point was to immediately stop the transfer of Canadian helicopters, EMS pilots, to the direct employ of Ornge. And then there's several others that I've seen that pick up on that theme. And to me, that's something very much different than what you're saying today, which is not so much who's managing the helicopters, it's are there enough critical care paramedics being trained and hired, and the need to increase the staffing of paramedics. Like, well, you keep talking about paramedic staffing.
Sure.
And that's got, as far as quite frankly, I don't care who runs the helicopters, but if we're trying to sort out as a committee what is the critical problem here, it seems to me that what you keep telling us over and over and over again, I hear is you need another paramedic, you need a 24-hour third crew in Thunder Bay, and that would be your recommendation.
No, it's twofold. One, we need paramedics on that helicopter 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Number one. Number two, the inability to staff the helicopters with pilots has been exacerbated over the last 12 months as people have left because they don't want to work for Ornge. I'm hoping in the long term, whatever the committee recommends is listened to on all fronts. I'm hoping that the taxpayer gets the best value. I'm hoping that we are in a situation where if it's an outside contractor, they can retain the pilots. If it's Ornge, that they can start listening to why people have left. It's been claimed by one individual that we don't know why pilots have left us. Well, we've been telling them time and time again. So, you know, I'm not going to sit here and support 100% Ornge should be operating helicopters. I'm not going to sit here and support 100% an outside contractor should employ the helicopters. What I am saying is that it has to be an operator that can engage its staff. It has to be an operator that has an operational history to draw on. It has to be an operator that can maintain and, in fact, foster good relations with its employees.
So, and again, what we're getting is a conflict from what you're saying and the other information we've seen. Because the letter from Paul Eric Bindrup, I believe is the pronunciation, he talks about December of last year, we watched as the fabric of the Ornge machine began to unravel, and, you know, so this is as the story unfolds.
I
and
think
then
that
he
was
talks
as shocking
about
to him as everybody else, quite frankly.
Yeah. And the Honourable Deb Matthews' installation of Mr. McCurley as interim CEO and the major corporate restructuring that followed gave us a sense of hope that we would be able to continue to serve the people of Ontario as medevac pilots. And then he expresses some concern. He talks about being very pleased with the Pilatus PC-12 and the job they're able to do. And talks about being, you know, very proud of the work that the medevac pilots can do. And then today, we've got another email, which is other pilots responding to his email, and I counted them up, and there must be 30 Ornge pilots.
Yeah, it'd be all the fixed-wing pilots. Sure.
But if we've got a whole bunch of happy camper who are pleased that things have turned around, that things have gotten a whole bunch better, and who are willing to sign their name and say so publicly. This is another Thunder Bay pilot saying, I agree 100% with the above letter written by Captain Paul Eric Bindrup. I would also like to add that I've been involved in aviation since 1989, and I have flown as a medevac pilot on and off since the mid-90s. It was not better 18 years ago or 4 years ago. It is better now. Ornge fixed wing has its problems, but these problems should not lead to, as some would like, a full shutdown of Ornge Air.
Okay,
Going back to the good old days of contract air services would not be better nor safer for the citizens of Ontario. And it goes, like as I say, there's literally 30 responses here, where pilots who are agreeing to sign their names say, I 100% support this. I support your letter to the Standing Committee. I support what this other pilot is saying about Ornge has turned around, and we're very proud of the work that Ornge does.
You're missing the fundamental point. That's the fixed-wing side. This whole discussion I've been having with you has got nothing to do with the fixed-wing operations. The fixed-wing pilots, for the majority of them, not all, but the majority of them, are coming into their perhaps second or third job. They're going to move on somewhere else, into Porter or Jazz or on up the line. The rotary wing side of the house is a completely different ballgame. We've got aircraft that are worth $14 or $15 million. We have a simulator that's equal in complexity to the aircraft. We have, all totaled, $150 roughly million worth of physical assets sitting there, whether it's the Sikorsky 76s or the AW139s. We're not entry-level pilots here. We are the other end of the industry. We're top-level pilots. We hold the highest licenses in license categories. We operate complex multi-engine IFR helicopters in all weather conditions under all circumstances. For us, there's only one more move. And that's not upwards, it's lateral. It's lateral into the same type of aircraft to another operation. For us that are there, that are flying these things, we want to be flying medevac. We don't want to fly offshore. We have the opportunities. It's not an entry-level situation. It's not a second or third job situation. It's a career decision.
Well,
and I applaud my fixed-wing colleagues.
Yeah, but
I really do.
But if you are saying that Orange is, I totally get that flying a fixed wing and flying a rotary are two different skill sets, and that there are way more fixed wing pilots than there are rotary wing. I get that. Mm-hmm. But so I understand that you're two different skill sets of pilots. But I don't get why, if Orange is a good employer for some kinds of pilots, mm-hmm. why is there an automatic presumption that it's a bad employer for another set of pilots? I understand that when Dr. Mazza was there, that he was very hard to work to and bullied people and all those things we've heard. But he's not there now.
Which is a good thing. And I think this, let's call it a friction, comes from the fact that all, if not almost all, of the structure of Orange Air is airline or fixed wing operation related people. There's, to my knowledge, maybe one or two that have any background in helicopters at all. And I don't know of any, again, I stand to be corrected here, but I don't know of any that have any medevac background, with the exception of one individual who's the interim operations manager on the rotary side, who comes from our ranks. He's one of our guys. That's where a lot of this is coming from, because we understand helicopters. Those other folks understand fixed wing, but they don't understand what a helicopter is all about and how to properly use it in this environment. We can, again, there's nothing, I'm not saying anything negative about the fixed wing side. I'm not. They come from some very, very small operations and very suspect type of equipment into something that's brand new. Good equipment. They're good people. They want to be doing what they're doing, but a lot of them are going to move elsewhere eventually. And on our side, we just want to do our jobs. We want to get out there and save lives.
But why can't the helicopter pilots transition into new equipment and do their jobs?
Thank you, and we'll move on to the opposition. Mr. Klees, you have 9 minutes.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification, Mr. Wade. I think you've been very clear about what the issue is. I also want to refer to this letter from Mr. Bindrup, and what is somewhat concerning in his letter, he makes reference to shutting down or the fact that someone is suggesting that the operation be shut down. No one has ever suggested that. What's at issue is who manages it and what the competency is of the managers behind the operation. And so if somehow there was a message that was spun through the front lines that someone is intent on shutting this operation down, it's simply not the case. What is the case is that we want to ensure that whoever is managing, whether it's the fixed wing or whether it's the rotor wing, that it's done with competency, and that the front line, whether they're fixed wing pilots or helicopter pilots, can have the confidence that the organization behind them is able to protect them, to ensure the resources are there, to ensure the training's there, to ensure the maintenance is there. And quite frankly, I think you've made it very clear, Mr. Rothfeld's made it very clear, others have made it very clear, that there's a lack of confidence in the Ornge organization of being able to do that. There are people who, in this province, have been in that business for many, many years. They have the core competency, and I think the question that we have to address is, does it make more sense to continue to prop up an organization that's proven they don't have the competency, or do we go to an organization and offer to have that organization run the operation and that we can get on with delivering the service? I'd just like your reaction to that position.
I agree.
I'd like to refer to the minister's letter to you dated April the 2nd, and first of all express a disappointment that once again we have nice words coming from the Minister of Health. Thank you, Mr. Wade, for your interest. I'm particularly interested in your willingness to serve on the board. Copied Mr. McCurley, and that's the end of it. She refers to the commitment of the government to transparency and accountability. Mr. Wade, I have on my iPad here a very interesting website, and it's called Aircraft Out of Service Report.
Oh, geez.
Ornge.
Yeah.
There it is. I actually got a password for that, which allowed me up until recently to go on a daily basis and determine which aircraft were out of service. When did this stop getting reported?
Well, out-of-service reports are still entered. They're entered by shift daily by the pilots that are on duty. And so the information's still going in.
Is it available to the public?
I haven't physically been able to search our out-of-service reports.
We can't get in this anymore, so someone obviously is blocking us.
We can't see what our down staff was.
So here's my question. Wouldn't it be interesting if Ornge actually agreed to make that aircraft out of service report totally transparent and public so that people could see for themselves, so that this wouldn't have to be a kind of a confidential discussion between backroom people, and we wouldn't have to discuss or debate how many aircraft were out of service because of paramedic shortages or because of pilot shortages, because all of that should be on that website. Would you agree?
I would agree that it would be very interesting for the committee as a whole to see that information. Whether it should be in the public domain, I would draw hesitation there. I think I mentioned in my opening remarks that recently it was admitted to that they have a 54% availability rate at a cost that's no more than the previous vendor. 54% availability on a medevac system. We're talking rotary wing. We're not talking airplanes here. To me, is scary.
In other words, 54% of the time, they're available to respond to calls. And the rest of the time, regardless of what those calls are,
they're not available.
For
whatever reason. No medics, no pilots, perhaps a mechanical issue. Yeah.
Can you help us to understand what the implication is, and do you have any examples of times when that availability was not there, and the implication, the risk to the patient? Because we're constantly being told here that patient risk is not an issue. That people...
Well, quite frankly, if the helicopter's not available because there's no pilot on it or no paramedics on it, that's a risk to somebody.
Do you have a specific example that you personally are aware of where there was significant there was a significant result to a patient, perhaps that a patient died, in terms of your recent experience? because the helicopter was not available?
We would only hear through the land medics that a call that they were on, that we were called for, they were asking for our help, went unfilled. Because if the call came in to the dispatch center and we weren't staffed, we'd never get the call. So you find out these things after the fact when they ask you at the hospital, where were you on such and such a day? We were down Highway 61. We had a car rolled over. We needed you. Where were you? We were sitting at the base with no medics. So from the actual date or day of an occurrence, unless we were privy to the call information coming in, we wouldn't even hear about it. But I'd like to also wrap this up. We did have an incident a number of years ago where there was a plane crash north of Thunder Bay, approximately for us about a 14-minute flight, and we were fueled, ready to go, and they sent us to Ignace to pick up an interfacility transfer patient. We were begging, what about the plane crash? And all we got back from the communication center was, it's unconfirmed. Well, I'm sorry, but it's not unconfirmed. Thunder Bay is a major airport. A lot of these aircraft, in one case, this particular aircraft that went down was actually a Ministry of Natural Resources contractor who flies as a observation plane or a bird dog plane for the air tankers. We knew the plane. We knew where it was. We knew when it was down. We couldn't go and help.
I want to close with this question then. As a helicopter pilot, you are serving in a provincial air ambulance service.
Yeah.
In your opinion, who at the end of the day has ultimate responsibility to ensure oversight of our air ambulance service?
Oh, that would have to fall with the Minister of Health, whoever the Minister of the day would be.
Thank you.
Very much, and we'll move to the NDP, and you have 4 minutes. That brings us everybody up to 25.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your deputation today. So you were at the tail end of the Liberals' questioning. You were a proposition was put to you, but you didn't get a chance to respond to it because the time had ended. I'd like you to respond to that, just to clarify the difference between why some of the fixed-wing pilots are happy with their circumstances and why that's not taking into consideration the different circumstances of the rotary wing pilots. The question was thrown out there in the air that why can't helicopters or helicopter pilots transition into the new equipment, and why that's difficult, and what's the difference between the fixed wing and the rotary wing situation?
There isn't a problem transitioning into the new equipment for the pilot. The training is quite comprehensive. It's terribly expensive as well. You got to realize these are $125,000 worth of training going into us to transition onto this new aircraft. So it's a ground school component, then 2 weeks, approximately 48 to 50 hours in the simulator. So the transition to the new equipment isn't a problem. It's a lot of work, but it should be a lot of work because it's a very technically advanced aircraft. So there isn't a problem there. Now, of course, our bases aren't going to get it for the foreseeable future, so that's put everything to a grinding halt. But am I on the wrong?
No, you're right. Yeah,
I'm on the wrong.
No, you're on the right.
track.
You're on the
Okay.
right trajectory. Just to answer that question, what's the difference? Well, after you've explained some of the difference. One, you're not going to get the helicopter.
Yeah.
And two, the training that's required is quite extensive.
It's vastly more than the fixed wing aircraft.
But also, if you can focus as, like you came all the way down from Thunder Bay, you're pretty motivated to see changes.
Yeah.
We get this letter from the fixed wing that says, thank you very much, attaboy, good job, we're so happy. Then we get you, a pilot with years of experience, who takes his time to come down here and tell us, come and help us, things are not good. How come it could be so different? You're under the same new management, you're under the same new rules, so why do we have an attaboy on one side, and on the other side we have you coming here saying, help me?
Well, a lot of our fixed wing colleagues come from older equipment, perhaps less capable airplanes into a pretty nice airplane, technically advanced. But a lot of them are also coming in very junior positions, building their time, building their experience, and moving to other operators like WestJet or Porter or the airline. It's where most of them want to go. Not all. Some want to stay with medevac, and kudos for that. So they're very happy to get an opportunity on a new aircraft type, new navigation types of equipment, technologically more advanced equipment, so they can move on to the other operators. And they should be happy because it's a good opportunity for them. And those who want to make a career and stay also should be happy. But on the helicopter side, we're not moving on. We're at the top end of the industry now, and we want to make sure that the culture to operate properly is there. We want to make sure that all the staffing level is there. We don't want to see our training eroded, as has been evident lately. We want to make sure that we're using those full motion simulators. Like the simulator mentioned in the letter isn't a true simulator. It's a flight training device. It's not. It's a bank of screens. It's a procedures trainer. You're not on full motion. It's a procedures trainer. You go and do your training, then you do your check ride in the airplane. For us, we're using simulators that are every bit as complex as a 777 simulator. This is stuff where you could go in and you can train all procedures, all emergencies, all eventualities, right up to the point where you can be certified to fly that aircraft when you come out of the simulator, and a full Transport Canada check ride. It's vastly different between the complexity of the helicopter operation and the simplicity of the fixed-wing operation. Kudos to them. They're doing, I think, my colleagues on the fixed-wing side, they're doing some good work. But on the helicopter side, it needs work.
Thank you, and we'll move to the government for 4 minutes of questioning.
And just as a sidebar here, so all the committee members understand, Mr. Klees had asked earlier if the minister would be able to return on Thursday from 4:30 to 7. Minister Matthews will be out of the country on Thursday. But she can make her way. She was headed the other direction, but she can make her way back and be here at 5:30. She was headed for London, but she is willing to turn around and be back at 5:30. So if you would really like to hear from Minister Matthews more, she will make herself available from 5:30 to 7. Obviously. We need to let her know which direction she should be heading, east or west.
Sure, I think the minister should turn around and come back. Look forward to seeing her.
Okay, she will be here at 5:30 then.
Okay, thank you for that. And
we still have to. Sorry for that little interruption.
Before you start, I'd like to actually invite all the members of the committee and the minister to come to Thunder Bay and talk to us sometime. And see what's really going on. Listen to people. It shouldn't be an orange propaganda piece. Talk to us on the front lines. Take a random sampling. You'll hear differing opinion. You'll hear impassioned plea. We want to do our jobs.
And I know that Minister Matthews has visited some of the bases, so we will pass that along to her that she has an invite to Thunder Bay. You spoke about the concern that helicopter pilots had, that is their expertise at Ornge with respect to helicopters. I take it the majority of the air ambulance helicopter pilots have moved from Canadian helicopters to Ornge. That sounds to me like that expertise is building. Why this concern that there will be no expertise?
There's no historical operational experience on the infrastructure that you need behind the scenes to make helicopters operate properly. My engineering colleagues have told me that they're always short of spares. I know for certain there was a helicopter on the ramp in Thunder Bay that had been stripped of tail rotors and rotor blades and stripped of other components to put parts in another machine.
This is the old helicopters.
Yeah, correct. You know, I'm hearing things from others that even the new aircraft, there's some maintenance issues. They don't have enough parts. They don't have enough spares. So there doesn't seem to be a supporting infrastructure that has the depth of experience and expertise needed to put all the pieces together. Again, if there is, I don't see it. I stand to be corrected. But it doesn't seem that way. We hope, again, that that kind of a culture is there. But we're just not seeing it.
Because I know somewhere in something I've seen, it does discuss the issue of spare parts for helicopters, and that being a somewhat different issue than spare parts for fixed wings. So, and I'm sorry, I don't know where that piece of paper went through my head, but it is an issue that I believe has been recognized. Okay. So that I guess I'm just a little bit frustrated that there's just this, no, you can't do it. Fixed wing can do it, but helicopter can't, and trying to get a grasp on why.
The bulk of the managerial structure all come from either airline backgrounds or fixed wing operations of some sort. And none of it, except for one individual, perhaps two, come from a helicopter side. And of those one or two individuals, none of them come from Medevac's side. So they don't understand that we're not a scheduled airline service. We're not an interfacility transfer that gets a call to go 2 hours from now. We get a call, we go now. We have a 10-minute response time, which we could actually do if we had medics and fuel supply at our base. We don't even have fuel. So I don't think they understand.
But that's exactly, if I, okay, I was just going to say that's exactly what the medic that we were talking to this morning was talking about, was getting on a helicopter, one of the new helicopters, and just having a few minutes to get out of there once you got the call. So what I heard this morning, in fact, was that team of the paramedic and the helicopter people getting out of there. So that obviously in London there was an understanding of this.
But that doesn't come from the upper echelons of Ornge Air. That comes from the frontline pilots and paramedics who have done this job for years, that are a team that can get in that call, get the call, respond, get in the thing, and get it airborne and get it to an accident scene in minutes. That's what we do. That's not what the administration does. That's what we do. And that has to be recognized. Whether it's the fixed-wing pilots responding to their calls, they do a good job. Whether it's us responding to our calls, we also do a good job. But we can't do that unless we have proper staffing all the way through and a supporting cast behind the scenes that understands what we do.
And thank you very much, Mr. Wade, for taking the time to come down from Thunder Bay to come before the committee. It's very much appreciated. And the committee will be recessed until 5:30 this afternoon. 5:30 until 7. Yes, thank you.